it was just an experiment. It was a big what if. It was what if I cut no corners? What if it could be the best ingredients in the world? What if it could both deliver results to the kinds of people who really, really, really need to see a real result beyond moisturizing, beyond cleansing, really, really speaking to and nourishing the skin? What if it could do that? And what if it was the prettiest, most special feeling skincare too? What if every person wanted this and not just the hippy dippy crew that I grew up with? What if everybody wanted this and not just the fancy folk who want the pretty jars on their bathroom? What if skincare could just feel good? What if that was the aspirational thing, is for us to feel good in our skin? Not how somebody looks at us when they look at our skin, but how we feel in our skin when we come to the mirror each day and we see ourselves. When we find ourselves in the shower, eyes closed, and we touch ourselves.
Welcome to What Beauty Founders Don't Know, a podcast formerly known as JumpStart. Here, women-led, early-stage beauty brands learn counterintuitive insights to accelerate their profitability and revenue to $20 to $50 million and even $100 million without spending a fortune on ads, influencers, and reckless distribution. With your host, Rohit Banota, ex-P&G and founder of Toronto-based Jump Accelerator. Together, let's create a more conscious, humane, and beautiful planet. A woman's world. Don't forget to subscribe, click the bell notifications, and leave a review.
Hey, may I welcome you to What Beauty Founders Do Not Know podcast, which is all about what is it that early stage beauty founders do not quite wrap their heads around or find out a bit too late for them to succeed or scale up their ventures. Earlier, I used to call it JumpStart Beauty Brand, but then I saw a kids play room which said JumpStart, and I saw that too often. I thought, why not change the name? In any which ways, the theme was what beauty founders don't know. So that's why I chose this name, slightly long. But for all my listeners, I will try my best to introduce, and everybody knows about me. There's not a single soul, I think, who's interested in beauty who won't be aware of who May Lindstrom is and what she does. But I'll try to reinforce what you know and maybe add bits and pieces to it. May Lindstrom is the founder of her namesake, awesomely authentic, cult certified, sensorially formulated, and mystically depicted brand. Her story is straight out of a movie about a runaway teenager, love, road trip, wanderlust, and search for fun, truth, wealth, and authenticity. The brand is all about making this particular moment yours, touching your skin with intention, reigniting the romance within, and discovering your skin's ultimate health and radiance. And all my listeners, May Lindstrom is not just a brand, but a movement that is converting all the skeptics and seekers into believers, furthering their quest for authenticity and living life on terms true to themselves, and in doing so, finding the divine beauty within that never fades. So, with that, I pass it on to you, May. Do you have anything to say before we rock and roll with the questions?
That was so beautiful and so fun. Thank you. Thank you for having me. No, let's just dive in. I am fascinated by your whole concept and the idea that any of us knew anything when starting. And so much to know and so much not to know. Let's go.
Perfect. And another point, my listeners, today I feel like I really made it. I have arrived because I have May Lindstrom. In Sanskrit, we say Sakshat, meaning when God herself comes alive in front of you. I know it's a bit stretched, but that's what the moment means for me. But yeah, I'm absolutely thrilled to have May here. Let's start with your story, May, about your running away. Like when I was listening to or reading about your story, I felt as if you just went moment by moment. It's a story which is very worthy of being transformed into a movie, if you ask me. And I think it'll be a blockbuster. So take us through your journey, how it all led to May Lindstrom. And if I missed out any details, I would love those too.
How far back do you want to go?
So let's say your teenage.
So way, way back. Well, I have this picture in my head, and if I could paint it for everybody, it's a photograph taken of the field that I called home as a child. My parents met when my mother was 15 and my dad was 20. They met through her older brothers, and over the years developed a friendship, which led to a romance, which led to them writing letters back and forth. My mom was from Kansas City, my dad was from outside of Minneapolis. And by the time my mom was a senior in high school, she had moved to Minnesota, married my dad, and shortly after had my brother. And a handful of months later, moved with my infant baby born brother uh, to a field where they built a barn out of a kit. So
Wow.
I didn't know this was a thing. Apparently, you used to be able to build both houses and barns and all kinds of shelters out of kits. And my parents bought this little piece of land in Minnesota with nothing on it, just fields and forest and daisies. And they built a little red barn out of a kit, out of tin, and moved in there with my infant brother and myself. One little room. I slept in a drawer. I was born at home 6 weeks early. I was a footling breech, the very last baby that doctor delivered. He showed up just as the feet were coming out and nothing else. So I had a exciting entry into life and then was born into a literal barn and raised by my family there. We lived in the barn until I was around 3 or 4, and then they started building our home by hand. Literally, my mom and my dad and a few of their friends were all building their houses together. And we grew a lot of our own food. We had goats. My mom made goat milk. My dad devised a contraption where in the winter he would hook his bicycle up to a grain mill and would grind our grain to make flour, which we'd make bread from and cook in our wood fired oven filled with fire we made from our wood on our land. It was very, very back to the earth. This was the 80s, but we were living like Little House on the Prairie. And it was very intentional. They chose a hard life. And they chose it very much on purpose. They were young and having a wild romance. And as you know from having researched a bit and listened to some of my other storytelling, um, I might have taken after them just a bit. My parents were dreamers. Once the barn had served its purpose, we moved into the home that they had built when I was around 4. And then shortly after, my parents divorced. And then what was a hard on purpose life became much harder. Two people doing that together on purpose with intention, challenging enough when suddenly it's two single parents and no resources. Very hard. So I grew up, my early years, 0 to 5, was there in the country, playing in the dirt, being raised in the gardens, chasing after the goats, living in that way, probably tied to my mother's chest for a good portion of it. And the years that came after, it was a split between my two households. So lots more back and forth, a lot more stress on everybody, just survival mode. Um, Around that same time, around 5, I started school. And I remember going to my first sleepover at a friend's house without my parents. And it was a big deal. I was a shy kid and lived in the middle of nowhere. Our nearest neighbors were miles away. I had not been well socialized. And during kindergarten was pretty much my first real exposure to groups of other children. So it took me a minute to adjust as a human. And as this was happening, I was also finding a lot of challenge in my own body. One of my earliest memories was at that sleepover, going to wash my hands before dinner. And I went into the restroom, and this is, 90, 94, somewhere, maybe, no, not even that, late 80s. And yeah, I was 5, so I guess I was 88. And I went to wash my hands, and this was, you'd have in the bathroom, there'd be the bottle of hand wash, and next to it would be a bottle of scented lotion, was kind of the thing of the time. And I didn't have that. I grew up on goat soap made from our neighbors and natural before that was a thing. And So I'd never used fragrance soap before. I'd never used lotion from a fancy container in someone else's bathroom. And I actually didn't know what these things were. These were mystery bottles, but I was a kid and I washed my hands and I put a few pumps of the soap into my hands and started rubbing them. And almost instantly, my skin started burning and turned red. And I started getting blisters on my hands. And I was so scared. And I was a child. And my hands were burning. I started yelling. I was mortified by the yelling. Quiet kid. And my friend's parents came running, and my friend came running, and they're in the bathroom wondering what is happening. I'm just washing my hands. And what was happening was I was having an allergic reaction, but I hadn't realized that I was allergic to something as basic as soap, as basic as lotion. But it was the first of many times like that. And I found in the years to follow, I'd be in a public restroom. Later, I'd be in school. I'd be at the mall. I'd be clothes shopping. And I'd be in the bathroom, and there would be the soap dispensers with that ubiquitous pink soap that everyone can smell in their head. It stays on your hands for hours. And I would have to make the choice between washing my hands with soap that I knew was hurting me and not washing my hands, which is socially not acceptable and comes with its own conflict. So none of this seems like a big deal. I'm a little kid that can't use soap. There's ways around this, certainly, but it keeps going. And my skin gets worse. And the more I explore, the more I get scared. And even when I would go school shopping, touching the clothes in the mall, they would be stored with chemicals that would deter insects in storage. So when you go to buy your clothes from Walmart as a child for your school shopping, all of those clothes have been stored with things that I was very allergic to. And so I'd get rashes on my arms just going through the racks of clothing. So I was very, very hypersensitive. And I thought it was just me. And as a kid, I definitely thought it was just me. My friends weren't experiencing this. And later I learned my mom had my same skin. Her dad had had her same skin. This was family. This was genetic. This was something that I really couldn't help experiencing, but maybe I could make a change in. And so as a child, we coped by avoiding lots of things. And later, as a teenager, I didn't want to be avoiding anymore. I wanted to look at this and go, what is happening? And is there a solution that doesn't involve me not touching or being touched in my life? And there was. I started going to the library all the time. Again, I'm a kid. I have a library access in town, and that's what I got. This is pre-internet. This was pre really any of the resources that are available today. But what I do today, women have been doing since the beginning of time. And I would go to the library and I would find example after example of women using clays and salts and oils and herbs and honey and natural ingredients from their local environment to make a change in their skin, both for sanitation and cleanliness, but also for ritual, for celebration, um, for birthing, for death, for war, all of these big moments in life. And I was just trying to figure out how to take care of my skin. But what I found was there was so much more to it. I became really interested in the history of beauty and beauty rituals and self-care and skincare and looking at all these different cultures over the whole world. You can look everywhere. You can look at India, you can look at South America, you can look at Thailand, you can look everywhere. And everybody's doing the same thing. And nobody knew this. It wasn't like the women in Mexico were talking to the women in Japan. They weren't, they couldn't, but they were doing the same thing. And when I was a child, my mother would take me down to our river and we would pull the red clay out of the river and we would mix it with plants from our garden and plants from the marshes and ponds. It'd be marshmallow root, it'd be the red clay, it'd be, I don't know, lavender from my mother's garden. There'd be so many things, but I learned to play. I learned to find the beauty in these ingredients. I started studying these ingredients that had been used all over the world, and they're a little bit different. The plants that grew on my land, there where I grew up in northern Minnesota, were very different plants than grow in India, very different plants than grow in Africa, very different plants than grow in Mexico. Um, but not really. Some of them grow in all of those places. And in each case, I learned that each plant has something magical to contribute to the skin. And sometimes it's what it smells like. Sometimes it's a particular makeup of those natural chemical constituents within a plant, the different fatty acids, the different nourishment of the oils. It's like food. It's the internal feeding meets the external feeding. And often it's the same thing. It's the same things that we would use to feed our insides. These women for millennia have been treating our outsides the same. And I just found this deeply inspiring because it wasn't about avoid, what not to touch, what not to use. It was about what can I feed in? What can I feed in? And so in my teenage years, I started checking out all these different books. And they were simple things, learning how to make soap, learning how to blend oils, learning how to work with different plants. And so it started there with some really basic chemistry. And in the years that followed, I really focused in on specific skin concerns, skin issues, like my own psoriasis, dermatitis, eczema, allergic reactions. And then, of course, I would meet people with severe acne, people who were going through chemotherapy, undergoing treatments for cancer, radiation, burns, scars, trauma to the skin of all kinds. And I was fascinated and I was looking for my human guinea pigs. So through my late teens, through my mid 20s, that was my focus. I was reading everything that I could about different plants and minerals. I was reading everything that I could about different skin conditions, studying dermatological texts, studying ancient beauty texts, the intersection of um, history and new science and my own inclination towards beauty and ritual and the sense really came together in this world. I never thought that this would be what I would do for a career. I always was obsessed with food as a small child. The inclinations were the same. I had this obsession with ingredients and bringing them together. You take these individual little pieces and then they come together. It's like making soup. You start with a potato and an onion and a chicken and a carrot. And each of those things on their own are not very interesting. You throw them all in the pot with some salt and some thyme, and let everything simmer, and now you have something that feeds and nourishes. And I take simple clay from the earth, a variety of plants, and I make potions that feed the skin in ways that I just hadn't seen anybody doing with intention towards functional skin result for people who have true skin challenge. I was raised by hippies, so I was well aware that there was even that my mom is a child of the 60s. I grew up in the 80s, but in my little house on the Prairie Way, there was certainly a community around us that was that original hippie crew. We all used Dr. Bronner's and the natural everything, eating tofu and tempeh growing up. And we were part of all of that. But that was really about kind of crunchy, earthy, save the environment direction. And I'm obviously very pro that. There's nothing without our earth, mama. But for me, it was so much more serious. I would itch my skin until I would bleed. And the people that I was meeting and creating formulas for, many of them wouldn't even leave their house. They were so physically uncomfortable in their skin and emotionally uncomfortable in their skin. So my whole mission became about really servicing these women who didn't even want to be in their skin anymore. And I would walk into their bathrooms and they would just be feeling hopeless. And I would see on the top of their counter, they'd have really beautifully packaged skincare of something. They'd have something symbolic. It would be a Chanel bottle. It might not even be skincare because that was too scary. It'd be a Tom Ford lipstick. It'd be just something iconic and classic that sat on their bathroom and felt good because what they were using in their drawers, I'd open their drawers and it would be full of all these uh, little pots of things labeled anti-itch and anti-eczema and anti-age and anti. Um, and it all felt so heavy. And I could see their eyes light up when they saw pretty packaging. And then I would talk to them about the gap between what they were using on their skin and what they aspired to. And so often, these women just didn't even feel like there was a world in which they would ever be the kind of woman who would have something beautiful on their shelf that they actually could use. And I would be making them formulas fresh. This is when I was doing all bespoke. And I would meet with these women one on one and devise custom formulations for them to meet the specific needs of their skin right then. And they would use that and they'd be in funny little apothecary jars. But I'd come over to their houses and those little jars would be hidden away and they'd still have this symbol, the pretty packaged symbol out on display. And over the years, as more and more people told me that I'd be an idiot if I didn't start bottling these formulas, I had a lot of resistance, especially to selling these things that I really thought people needed. And well, what I found, well, what my goal was, I wanted to be what they were aspirationally reaching for. I wanted to be the beautiful packaging that sat on their shelf and that they used. I wanted them to open a jar and instead of it saying on it anti-itch, that it just looks beautiful and feels beautiful and they open it and they smell and they breathe in and they arrive and they feel good and they don't have to think about the fact that their skin itches. They don't have to think about this fact that their skin is still red. Some people will always have itchy red skin, but they don't have to be reminded every day with the packaging that says so. That isn't beautiful. It doesn't smell good. It doesn't feel good. It was like every time these women would meet themselves in their skin in the bathroom, they were reminded of what parts of them were broken. And all I wanted to do was grab them by the face and show them how beautiful they are already. So it was a bit of a different mission. I had my own relationship to my own skin that was complicated. I felt very insecure in my own skin. Even after my skin began to change and heal, I self-identified as broken in my skin for a long time. And I still see that today. Decades later, I've been doing this for 20 years. And I will meet with women and I will look at their skin, and their skin will look perfect, just perfect, healthy, vibrant, totally functional on every level. And they'll have had a story like mine in their youth. Maybe it was 10 years ago, maybe it was 50 years ago, but they will still describe themselves as hurt in that way. Even if it was acne, I'll meet with someone and they'll say, oh, yes, I have acne prone skin. And I'll look at them and there's not a trace of acne on their skin, right? But I can look at you and you would probably say, yeah, I have acne prone skin. I'd say, what year?
Wow.
And usually it'll be a 62-year-old woman and they'll say, I guess there was that time when I was 35 during my second pregnancy, but really it was when I was 16 and it was really rough for 4 years or so. And they'll tell this story and I'll say, yes, but that was 50 years ago. And the story is still that this is a problem. The story is still that this is still in there and it's about to come get you. It felt like an existential threat. And again, this is sort of a funny skin conversation, but so much of this is in our heads. It becomes in our heads. And um, we're so hard on ourselves about how our skin presents. If we have the little bit of redness or a little breakout or a little rough patch or a dry spot. We live in this world where there's an expectation that we be perfectly flawless all the time. And so it helps us to cling to those identities we've given ourselves: sensitive, acne prone. Um, they stay.
Wow. Love it. Sorry, I cut you short.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I feel like I'm going on a tangent in some direction that I wasn't sure quite where it was going. It felt important to me because there was such a divide between what was real, what was happening in real life, both for those people who were still in their very acute skin conditions, whose skin was falling off of them when I would meet with them, who needed major healing and support before we could even think about whether they were concerned with redness. We're concerned with that they're bleeding at night. We're concerned with that they're itching. We're concerned that their skin is flaking off. Sometimes there's very acute, real things to address, and my formulas do that. That's how I got going in this, is really touching those places that no one else was looking at, and treating with herbs, treating with plants, treating with oils and natural plant butters, treating with the best possible ingredients on the planet, the ingredients that I would feed you in a soup. This is really what I wanted to get on people's skin. And especially the demographic that I was working with, these were people with severe skin conditions. They were being prescribed major medications, both topically and internally. I think about how many people let me know that their doctors had told them to use tar for conditions like mine. I did it too. And
Wow.
bleach, yeah. And bleach. I remember there was 1 week that I had two different mothers tell me that they'd brought their babies, their small children, both under 2, to the doctor with skin rashes and were prescribed bleach baths. Um, this was not long ago. This was 20 years ago. This still gets prescribed in some cases. The treatments for severe skin conditions, regardless of cause, are almost universally very aggressive and very synthetic. And I only ever found relief when I turned back to earth, when I turned back to the ingredients that spoke to my body. And it was much softer. It was a much softer approach. But getting that to be taken seriously, I was taken seriously when I was making hardcore formulas in apothecary glass and funny little handwritten labels. I was a funny kind of skin witch at the time, but it was clear that what I was doing was serious. But it would also get hidden away, and it did not feel celebratory. When I sat down to work on making a collection that I could share, not just one-on-one in this bespoke way that I had been, but making something that I could bring to the shelf that I could share beyond my community of bespoke clients, I certainly could have dumbed it down in every way, both the potency of the formulas. Um, they're legit. They're not standard. I don't make a standard cleanser and moisturizer. Everything's a little weird. There's a learning curve to really figuring out how to make it work for you. These are the formulas, adaptations of that I made for my bespoke clients 2 decades ago. And they're packaged now. We're 14 years in from the hiring of my packaging designer. We're 15 years in on this packaging, on this iteration of my work, and it's stunning. It's beautiful. It is the thing that people now put on their counters, that they display, that they reach for with pride, that they reach for with excitement, that brings them delight. There's nothing secret tucked away in their drawers anymore that's really doing the heavy hitting. It's, I made the most beautiful thing that I could imagine, and I gave it all the power that I know how to give it. And it makes real change to real people who have real skin concerns. And that feels like a
Love
big
it.
deal.
Love it. This is the first time ever that in the very first question, somebody has dropped one insight after the another. Like the amount of wisdom that you just gave out in just answering the first question is amazing. Like I was just going over when you were talking, I was counting one, two, three, four, five, six. And I think you've already dropped like more than 12 nuggets of wisdom. Absolutely in awe. And I'll clarify a couple of things. Don't
Mhm.
worry about tangents.
Excellent.
I always go on tangent. That's like my main thing. It's not like the tangent is what we do. And just to quote Jeff Bezos, not that I'm comparing you and him, but when you wander, that's where you get real insights. So all insights come out of wandering. So it's good to go on tangents. I'm absolutely blown away by this insight of yours that they had drugstore brands in their drawers and they had just to feel good, they had a Tom Ford lipstick. Wow, that blew my mind when you were talking. And that makes me understand how well you understood beauty. What beauty means to women. For them,
Yeah.
it's about aspiration. You get it. So that was amazing. Then the time you took to create your formulation, like you started educating yourself in your teens. And I think you launched your brand, or even if you started, went ahead with bespoke formulations, when was that exactly? Like how many years? Three, four, five
Mm.
years? More than that?
The period I was doing bespoke formulas was from my late teens through my mid 20s. I started formally working on my Lindstrom Skin in 2008. We launched our website in 2011. And so we
Wow.
just passed 12 years officially.
Is it fair to say that you took 4 to 6, 7 years at least working and perfecting your formulation before you opened it out to anybody who wants to buy?
Yeah, I would say that's pretty fair. Depending on how you count, it could be even longer. I mean, I really have been doing this since I was a child. This is my first language. It's,
Love it.
I didn't know that this would be something that would become my career. I certainly didn't think it would be a multi-decade career, multi-million-dollar brand. That blows my mind. I'm a hippie kid born in a barn with rashy skin. This was not where I thought I was going. I didn't know there was a luxury bone in my body, but it turns out that luxury means something really specific to me too, the same way that beauty does. And it's about this deeper relating. It's about this way of really leaning in and being with myself, like really being with myself. And as a child with so much discomfort in my body, as a young person with so much discomfort in my body, it was really hard for me to be in my skin. And even later years when I was doing bespoke work, it was just therapy. It was personal therapy. I was servicing people who had more extreme needs even than my own. And that was really helpful too. It really normalized what was happening for me. It showed me how actually common it is to have challenge in the skin, and even more common to have lost your relationship to your skin. And for me, this really just became about if I can make the most beautiful thing I can dream of, and if I can make it so sensorial and beautiful and delicious and smell good and feel good and tantalize every sense. You use the clean dirt and it bubbles and fizzes and puffs up into a mousse. It sounds like Rice Krispies. The blue cocoon is iconic. Everybody knows about the blue cocoon. It's this gorgeous, solid blue balm. It launched a billion copycats, but there's only one. And it's so special. It has changed so many lives who had skin that could find comfort in nothing else. There's not a more soothing moisturizer on the planet. I can just say that. I just know I can't get better ingredients than I get. I can't make it in a more intimate and conscious way than we do. We couldn't possibly send it out fresher than it is. Everything has a birth date on it. It's so special. We do things very different. And, when I set out to do this, it was just an experiment. It was a big what if. It was what if I cut no corners? What if it could be the best ingredients in the world? What if it could both deliver results to the kinds of people who really, really, really need to see a real result beyond moisturizing, beyond cleansing, really, really speaking to and nourishing the skin? What if it could do that? And what if it was the prettiest, most special feeling skincare too? What if every person wanted this and not just the hippy dippy crew that I grew up with? What if everybody wanted this and not just the fancy folk who want the pretty jars on their bathroom? What if skincare could just feel good? What if that was the aspirational thing, is for us to feel good in our skin? Not how somebody looks at us when they look at our skin, but how we feel in our skin when we come to the mirror each day and we see ourselves, when we find ourselves in the shower, eyes closed, and we touch ourselves. It's a big deal. And I think this is cocky, but I solved these formulas a long time ago. What we do is we get better and better and better with every batch. We get better access to ingredients with every year. We get closer and closer relationships to our farmers and vendors. What we're doing today, even though the formulas have barely changed, if at all, is
Which was
so
one of my
much better.
questions, by the way.
Yeah, there's been very little changes. So when we first launched in 2011, there was 4 core products. There was the problem solver, the clean dirt, the good stuff, and the used to. 1 body oil, 1 face oil, 1 exfoliant, 1 mask. It was very concise and very powerful. And every one of those is a star, and all 4 are still here. The good stuff is now limited release. We actually just did our winter release launch this morning. So this is a big deal day to be talking to you. So not sure when this goes live, but there's always a wait list for our next releases. We just do this a couple times a year now. It's a very, very special one. The good stuff is the formula that started the whole thing. I used to bring that one to set in a mason jar, like a quart glass mason jar filled with this gold shimmering oil. And I was working as a makeup artist, and I would bring it to set and massage it on all the models. And it was brilliant. Every time I brought that to set, I got the conversation of, "Hey, May, you're great at this, but you're an idiot if you don't start bottling that." So that was the real kicker that got things going. And yeah, it's still here. I've been wearing that one for since 2007, a
Love
long
it,
time.
love it. I cannot tell you how many beauty founders have come to me with your site. They would show me your site, your packaging, and Rohit, take a look at this. I want something like this. And I would tell them, maybe it's her design, or maybe it's just me. Don't try to copy her. Be yourself. I've always felt every time I looked at a brand, and you can see that through my questions too, that you're a genius. And now I'm decoding your thinking with going into people's houses, with the amount of education, the effort you put into educating yourself, with the stuff they're telling me, your farmer's relationship is improving, your ingredients are improving. So these are now, of course, you will always stay one step ahead. So, but for others to decode it, right? One of the questions that I had in my mind was around, you already said that the formulations have not changed and it's been a very, very long time, right? But out of all of these, you educating yourself and then iterating and improving with everything that you're doing, you asking the what if question, which I think is, I don't think there's any book that can teach that or anybody who can teach that. But the fact that you went inside people's homes, I only know of 3. One is the biggest corporate companies that give millions. P&G does that a lot. It's called ethnographic research. They would go and live with people inside their homes, and great insights come out of it. Second, Glossier founder Emily Weiss, she used to go into the bathrooms of people, and we all know where she has gone. And the only third person that I've seen, and it's not in ranking, is you. It because they were friends and family, right? But still, what made you go to them? Was it just that you were delivering stuff, or you developed a curiosity and you would make it a point that you do go into their homes and look around what they're doing and how they're using it?
It was just how I worked. It was always in people's homes when it was possible. Also, um, part of that chapter where I was really honing in on these specific formulas, I was living in my car. I was moving from city to city. I was doing other odd jobs. This was on the side. I was really researching these formulas because I wanted answers. I wanted to know what was possible. And I didn't think I was going to sell this. I didn't think that I was going to really make this. I don't know. There wasn't a Malin Skin in my head. And at the time, there wasn't brands like mine out there. I don't, yeah,
They
you said
still aren't.
there still there still aren't.
Yeah.
But if you go back to 2008, when I really was focusing on this, I had decided to bottle something officially. I was finalizing those formulas, going through my notebooks and my client archives, and really thinking about which of my formulas have had the most impact and had the ability to have the most impact on the widest group of people outside of these acute concerns. And that's how I chose the initial 4 formulas. At first, it was going to just be the good stuff. I felt very insecure. I knew that the good stuff was pretty magical because I'd bring it to set and everybody would leave with little sample bottles. Everybody was telling me to bottle that one. And the good stuff was sexy. It was this beautiful gold shimmering oil. It smells insane. It's chocolate and flowers, and it's romantic and sensual and really easy to. It was like if you dressed up vegetables and disguised it as a brownie somehow. It was so palatable, like such palatable, beautiful skincare. It wasn't anything like some of these more potent plant-based formulas that I would make for people undergoing chemotherapy. It was a sexy gold oil that I would put on models on set. And that story felt easier at the time to tell. I was scared. I was scared to share my kind of weirdo formulas. I was scared to share these formulas that had been such a big deal to these women with acute skin concerns. I was afraid to put a price point on it. I was afraid to package it. I didn't know who I would market it to, if not. Uh, I had just always been a relationship person. I had always made skincare for the individual. I had been able to look in my clients' eyes and hold their hands and hear from them what was hurting. There's what I could see in the skin, there's what I could physically observe, there's what I could touch, and then there's what they could share. And it was when they would share with me that I could really see what they were hungry for, both physically, usually was a way of seeing, are they full of heat? Are they angry? Are they stuck? Are they, what is happening here? Sometimes it was just, a reaction to chemo, but sometimes it was a reaction to a life of just hating themselves. And there'd be these little steps that we could take in either case, whether I was providing ingredients that would soften and moisturize and calm and cool following flare ups from radiation treatments. That's one thing. But there'd be other clients who all I would do was sit in their bathrooms and teach them to splash their face with warm water and stay there until they could feel their skin soften, and then massage something that smelled good into it and take a deep breath. And that might be it. That might be the whole thing because they hadn't done that before. They'd only ever reached into a drawer, took out something with some garish label on it, and slapped it on their skin. Literally slapped it on their skin. I would just watch how people would touch themselves in the mirror. And it was heartbreaking, actually. The reason that my packaging had to be so beautiful was because it needed to inspire a change in how my clients were treating themselves. There was so much sadness and so much holding back that even when I started bringing samples in pretty packaging, I would watch a whole different behavior where then it was too pretty. I actually see this now. It happens today. This is 20 years later. But this happens today where someone will order the blue cocoon and it's so pretty that they'll get it home and they'll have ordered it because they'll have come upon us after searching for the best skincare for sensitive skin or the best moisturizer for eczema or whatever. However, it is that they came across us, they would finally get up the nerve to buy the blue cocoon and they'd get it home and they'd open the jar and they'd go, oh, it's so pretty. I can't touch that. And they'd put it back. I've watched people do this. I have people who write me all the time and say, oh, I got it. It looks so pretty. I'm going to take it out on my birthday. I'm going to take it out before the date this weekend. I have a bath planned for Sunday. And I'd go, my God, what if we treated our vegetables like that? If we were like, oh, I'm going to have broccoli on Sunday. I'm going to have broccoli on the 1st. That's my anniversary. We have to feed ourselves, but there's so much holding back when things feel good. And I get it. I have this funny thing. I do it myself. I'll be swinging on a swing set with my kids. I have an 11-year-old and a 7-year-old. I'll be swinging on a swing set with my kids, and they will be squealing and laughing, and I can feel myself swinging. I can feel myself start to relax. I can feel myself start to have a good time, and I will stop myself from getting too silly, having too much fun. I do it on the swing set, but I watch people do that in their bathroom. I watch people resist pleasure and connection. And so my work today, when I said this, this was my cocky thing. I think I solved the formulas. What I'm still doing, what's still my mission, is getting people to know that they are worthy. They are worthy of extraordinary care. We have extraordinary care. We offer extraordinary care. I have formulas that are game changers. But the biggest thing is the ability to show up in presence with your own touch and connection. And I don't know if that's a thing that can be taught, but it's my mission to live it and to let that be seen and to get people excited about loving on themselves. It really helps to make it beautiful. It really helps to make it feel good.
Well, I have to say, I'm talking to a magician. You just dropped a BBI, big bomb of insight, when you said people stop themselves from pleasure because they try to save it for a special day. What an amazing insight into human psychology. I don't know how many people have brought to your site when the conversation starts. They would give your reference because everybody gives a few references of beauty brands that they like, etc. And I don't think I've seen any other beauty brand like yours and founder story and what you are doing. I can say it very fairly because I think I must have seen almost every, at least on Sephora, Ulta, Credo, I go there and I see what the category has. I don't think I've seen any other beauty brand like yours. And I shouldn't say ahead, I should say different. You're not competing with anyone else, so it's not about being ahead. You're on a different plane altogether. And this is now it's going to be TFT. I'm also a master of abbreviations and acronyms. So TFT is time for tangent, which is like a main thing, right? So this question was not in the main thing. But listening to you, the first few questions, and we are just getting started, an interview deep dive. But something popped into my mind, the kind of insights, the passion that you have, how you took such great risks. You wanted to give them the what ifs. You had that apprehension that whether it'll work or not, but you kept doing it, right? You kept going for it because you want to do that and you understand psychology so well. Tell me very honestly, with the cult following that you have, the amazing sensorial formulations that you have, with every editor, they are like absolute fan of yours. The consumers love your brand. Everybody looks up to May Lindstrom. You're an icon. Do you think the revenues that you have, like I said, it's time for tangent. This question wasn't there. The revenue or the stage that you have reached with your business has justified the cult status and what you are bringing to the market?
Do I think our revenue justifies what we bring to the market?
Yeah, like wherever you reached in terms of revenue, business, you think that it justifies what the value and the avant garde formulations and the thought process the category elevation that May Lindstrom has brought to skincare, do you think the revenue justifies that?
I think that I am incredibly surprised by our revenue every day. I think that's been true for all of the years. We launched our website in November of 2011, and I was one person. These were my formulas. They're still entirely my formulas. I blended every bottle by myself. I brought every package to the post office. There was no team. Over the years, I replaced myself one person at a time, one person at a time, one person at a time until in the beginning there was four of us and there was one person shipping packages and one person helping me mix and one person helping me with emails. And then there was two on each team and then there was three on each team and then there was four on each team. We're 28 in total today, up from being just me. That includes myself, my husband. That's the sourcing of all of our ingredients. That's the blending and filling in our private kitchen lab here in Los Angeles. That's all of our customer service, our Care Bears, who have their own stellar reputation. They're absurd and wonderful. Um, I never imagined that this brand that I made from my own formulas that I've been making since childhood could shift the industry in the way that we have. And sometimes I don't give myself enough credit for it. But if I pull back and I look at the history and I look at the timeline and I look at what else was happening in the beauty space in those years 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, as we were rising up, there weren't brands like ours around, period. The only natural skincare on the market, you had Whole Foods, you had farmers markets, you had Etsy. there wasn't, there was not luxury, organic, natural brands, period.
There still
And
aren't.
yeah, there really still aren't, not in the same way. There are some, and there are some who came up in the years close to us. There's some brands that, yeah, we came up in a really exciting time. And I think especially in the years immediately following, there was some really interesting brands that helped us rise and were alongside us. I didn't do this alone, but I think we did put out something that changed the whole space. I think about conversations I've had with retailers over the years. Like, we're not in Sephora. We've never been in Sephora, but Sephora has been in contact with us for years and years and years. From the beginning, I've had countless conversations with them. It's never going to be a fit for a lot of reasons for me. But when I think about even them, when we first started having those conversations, they had no natural brands in their store. And now their whole thing is this whole big clean movement. And what the hell does clean mean? It means nothing. But the marketing terms over just the years that we've been in business have changed so much. My era in these early days, we called it green beauty. And green beauty is not a term you hear anymore. It went from green beauty to clean beauty. Clean beauty became garbage. There was lots of years in there where everyone was just talking about non-toxic, all the no lists every brand came out with. Here's the things we don't put in our bottles, which was the only thing they'd write on their bottles. It's like, well, what's in it? What are we saying yes to? What's working here? Not just what are we avoiding? Those things seem obvious, but they're not obvious. Um, so I don't know. Does where we are justify what we've done in the market? I think that revenue wise, we're still at the tip of the iceberg. We are an independent family business from day one. We are 100% customer funded from day one. In the very beginning, I had no resources. I was a 25-year-old who was 3 seconds out of living in my car and peeing on the curb every morning. Like, this was not a direction I thought I was going, but I could see it. I could see it. I could see what could be, not just for my own brand, but I could see what needed to exist in the bigger space of beauty. I could see that while there wasn't a market of luxury organic circa 2008, that absolutely it would be. I remember sitting down with Rahman from the detox market, who we were with for several years. Great years. They're a wonderful company. Um, and but I remember sitting down with him in our early years, and it was his early years too, and talking to each other about the future of beauty, both for his brand, the Detox Market, and my brand, Lindstrom Skin, and him talking about the different doors that over time he wanted to open, and me talking about how much more intimate I wanted to get. And that's always been a bit of a conflict. I have always wanted to get closer and closer and closer. My inclination is one on one. I mean, my formulas were built one on one with individuals. I'd be looking in their eyes, I'd be speaking to their skin. Over time, I've had to build a business, which makes me look out more, look more at the collective, look more at the general population of whose needs I can meet. And then when I would talk to partners, they would want to have more and more stores, more and more doors. And they would say that, and I would bristle. And I'd go, wow, okay, so I can picture, and I projected it. I was like, if I look 10 years out, 20 years out, if I get my goal, I'm going to have this beautiful thing that exists, making this really special, spectacular, intimate skincare. But I think that this should also be the norm. I think that this quality standard should be the norm. I think that even if it can't be just like mine, there's cost limitations, there's all kinds of things. The way that I'm doing it is very expensive. It's very expensive, and it cannot help but be exclusionary because of the cost that it is. But my goal was to make a big enough impression of what it could be, focusing on the ingredients and focusing on the humanness, focusing on the care, that over time, lots of other brands would come up and do something similar, including the big brands. What I said would be success is when I walk into a beauty store, any beauty store, and it's full of brands like mine. I think that's success. I was never trying to be the only one. I was trying to make a movement. I was trying to change the world, which feels way aspirational for beauty, but it was so true.
You
There was
did.
such a gap.
You did change
And
the world. Yeah.
and we did. And so I would describe that. I would say, well, it'll be a success when I walk into any beauty store and it's full of brands like mine. And Ramon said, it'll be a success when I walk into any city and there's a detox market. And I remember thinking, I think it's going to happen. They're both going to happen. All of the retailers who were coming up at that time and who were focusing on natural brands, there weren't that many. There weren't that many of us to even put in their stores. But I said, it will. Your store will be full of brands like mine. And over time, the world will be full of stores like yours. And he was one of the only like natural beauty retailers. And I said, yes, but you won't be. That's going to be the normal. It won't be weird or exceptional that your focus is natural. I think that'll be the standard. And we look forward. That is 100% true. You can go to any major city, anywhere in the world, and the best beauty stores, if they're not primarily holding natural brands, it is most certainly a selling point in the store and a big marketing piece. And that did not exist before us.
Absolutely.
It's
You
very
you are
exciting.
a disruptor. And most of the disruptors do not last. They open the category, they elevate the category, they take all the risk, they introduce it to the world, they start getting adoption, but they sacrifice. They usually get sacrificed. They are the sacrificial lambs. But that's why I say you're a disruptor, but then you're a genius too. Because you not only disrupted, you stayed there to stay on top of the pyramid where still people are copying May Lindstrom. So that's an ode to your brand. So tell me one thing. You interact with a lot of other beauty brands, beauty founders, right? Even though you have your process intuitively, right? You're a disruptor. So there's nothing to look at and say, this is what I'm going to do. You are the one who's creating that process for the others, or that thinking, or that structure. But what do you see as one or two mistakes that other beauty brands do beyond the fact that they try to imitate you? Yours is the only truly feminine brand that I've seen that has stayed feminine, that feminine energy that you capture. I see a lot of other beauty brands that try to cater to women because women get beauty intuitively, right? So they'll pick one or two elements here and there, but over the period of time, in their attempt to scale, they lose that connection. And it has never been purely feminine. Your brand, for me, if you ask me, it's a feminine, and somebody has if somebody has been able to translate what beauty or skincare would really mean to a woman, that's your brand. I don't know if I got that right. That's just my appraisal. But yeah, coming back to beauty founders, what do you see as lacking? One or two things where you feel that they're not doing it right. Of course, clean is garbage. I get it. This, and I always tell them, if you want to use clean, at least have at least a definition of clean, if nothing else. At
Yeah.
least do that much work. Define clean, and then show how you're progressing on it. Right? You are and be transparent about it. At least do something. Don't just use clean and with, like you said, with six no nos and we are clean. Right? But what do you think is lacking? Like, why aren't there more male Lindstroms? Or if not more male Lindstroms, why aren't women creating such disruptive, authentic beauty brands? Or why aren't they succeeding?
I think it's incredibly difficult to do well, actually. When I think about our success, you asked, is it the products? Is it our community? Is it me? What is it? Um, and it is all of those things. I would be nowhere if these formulas did not work. I mean, really, just fundamentally out of the gate, like the products have to work. The formula has to work. And because that was my, MO from the beginning, like I wasn't trying to make something pretty. I wasn't trying to make anyone pretty. I was trying to make formulas that would stop people from hurting, period. That was it. And I wasn't doing it to make money. I wasn't selling it. These were largely volunteers. I was obsessed. I was just obsessed with finding out if it could be done, and if it could be done with plants, and if it could be done in a way that actually resonated with the body. That was my determination. I had so much conviction that it could be that I needed to see that through. And after I had created formulas that answered that, came the next level, which was, and now to make it feel good. And then I did that. I made the most beautiful packaging. I arranged everything. Every order gets a handwritten note. There's all these little extra touches, these little human pieces that were a really big deal. And I wanted that to feed in just as much as the actual topical formula. So that was the next layer. And now I have kind of the spaciousness of knowing the formula is solved. All of the steps around care are there. We've built our whole world around great service as the number one. And that's it. Like that's what we do. And I think that what gets missed is everybody's looking for something else bigger than that. And frankly, I don't know what's bigger than having a formula that actually works and loving care in which to share it. I think if I do that, if I make the best formulas that I can dream of in the world, no holding back, not on the ingredients, not on the packaging, not on the service, not on the follow-up, not on the education, not on the beautiful website, not on any of it. Gold foil printing, the whole shebang. You are worthy of extraordinary care. That is the belief. It's a core belief. And because that is always there, it's always the North Star. Every decision we make, if I'm approving or not approving a new ingredient, if I'm approving or not approving a print sample, if I am thinking about making something new, if I am thinking about whether we should run an ad, if I'm thinking about whether we should do a collaboration with somebody, if I'm thinking about whether we should be in retail again or with who, any of these conversations that come up, if I talk to another brand founder and they're going through something, all of it comes back to my own questions for myself, my own North Star. If I go outside of that, I mean, you asked before about being close with others in my community, other founders. And I would say there are a lot of people who follow Lindstrom Skin, I think because of the way we do business. And that's been really cool to discover. There are the people who find us because of our very specific formulas and the way that they um, support specific skin conditions. There are people who find us because there's no other skincare that's more sensual, more sensorial, more like beautiful for those special rituals. People who are looking for the spa day, we've got you too, right? You have real severe skin conditions, we've got you. You want a beautiful, luxurious time out on a Sunday, we've got you. Um, those things are so inherent in our brand. And other brand founders, they do reach out. And I am frequently in conversation with other founders. I love hopping onto calls like this, not always recorded, generally not recorded, sometimes on podcasts and things, but most often it's private conversations with other founders, usually when they've made a decision that they are regretting, like selling part of their company or doing some other shift in their operations, growing too fast, expanding to too many retailers, saying yes where they didn't mean to, negotiating a bad contract, whatever the case might be, they might just reach out um, for an ear. And usually I just give them some love and reflect back to them what they're saying to me. Sometimes we just need to be heard. Uh, so I'm in touch with lots of people, but usually where I find people are running into trouble is they forgot what they were doing. They just forgot what they were doing. They forgot why they were doing it. And the only people I know who have successful businesses, any kind of business, not just in beauty, are are the people who are obsessed with what they are actually offering to the world. I think that this is what I'm supposed to do here. It's not about skin, but it's about this expression of love. And I have so many people. I mean, I have women in their 70s who were taught not to touch their skin with anything more than a ring finger, who were taught to just dot the area around their eyes with a pinky, lest their touch be too much. They might stretch out their skin, they might hurt themselves. We've been taught not to trust our bodies, not to trust our touch, that there would be repercussions for pleasure. And I feel like what I'm doing now is about so much more than bringing, natural ingredients to the mainstream beauty space. It's about so much more than bringing luxury to the crunchy granola, natural beauty skincare world. It's about so much more even than soothing dermatitis and eczema and having skincare that works for post-cancer. It's about this bigger, more beautiful thing, which is why it kind of doesn't matter if people even shop from us. We have more people um, just following us, just reading my newsletter, watching stories on social media, looking up past podcasts and interviews. We have so many people doing that who've never bought a thing and who maybe never will. But they still tell me that when they pop onto Instagram and they start playing one of the random videos of me in the shower talking about feeling the texture get soft under your fingertips in the water, that those lessons shape everything in their skincare today. They might still be buying, drugstore brands that they can afford. They might still be buying totally conventional synthetic skincare because they love it. And they don't have skin like me and they can do whatever they want. They might not be shopping from us for a zillion different reasons, but they're still here and they're hearing this message and they're sharing that message, and it's changing the way that they operate in their skin. It's changing their relationship to their skin. And for me, that is the whole point. I could have put anything in these bottles, but what I really wanted to put in there was, you could open it up like a bottle coming out of the river with a message in it. And instead of pouring out a powder to cleanse with or an oil to moisturize with, maybe there's a note that comes out. And again, it's you are worthy of extraordinary care. I don't know how many times we need that reminder in a day, but it seems like all of them. We go to make our, you know, we go to make our breakfast. I want you to choose your favorite spoon out of the drawer. We go to have lunch. I want you to put a flower next to your plate. Take a second. Remember that the world is beautiful. And when we come back into those spaces, in the bookends of our day, in the morning and at night, when we have those few precious moments to come back to ourselves, we get to put our hands under water. It's probably warm. That's magical. We get to rinse our face. That's pretty special. There's been chapters in my life I didn't have access to running water. I certainly didn't have access to hot running water. It's not ever light for me what I'm doing here. Like, you're seeing me, you have a camera into my little world right now. Most people will listen to this on audio and they won't see this, but
That's a
I
big
am.
problem I have. Like we do all these videos. In the end, everybody listens on audio. But yeah, I get
Yes, but it
you're
is.
on point. Yeah.
Yeah, I am in my dream house. I am recording this podcast in a bathroom that I built, that I designed. It's got running water. It's got hot running water. It's beautiful. Um, I grew up with no running water. I grew up with no electricity. I grew up heating my bath water on the wood stove with wood that we chopped. I grew up heating buckets of water that we would fill a clawfoot bath with. I grew up sharing that bath water multiple people before I would get into the last bath. So it's really easy for people new to our world to drop into our website, to go to maylindstrom.com or to go onto our social, and they see how beautiful everything is, and they see our price point. It's expensive. This is expensive skincare. I'm just not going to try and say it another way. It's a real investment. I didn't come from any of this. I have a great amount of discomfort around the exclusionary feel of luxury. I have a hard time with the fact that our most powerful, most profound, most effective formula that's changed so much is $220. That's very difficult for me. I also know that that is what it costs for us to do it this way. And it's not going to work for everybody. Not everybody's going to be able to get the blue cocoon. But because the blue cocoon exists and because we exist, there will continue to be formulas made like this. There will continue to be an appreciation for formulas like this. There will continue to be farmers who grow these plants for us to make these into the future. If I'm not out here making, a big scene and being the person, being the brand that people look to as a marker of what is a way that this could be done, then I don't get to create that ripple. And so we're not, as an independent brand, we're still a small company. We've had kind of an outsized impact on our space for the size that we are. That I know. Again, you asked where my revenue is compared to our impact on the space. We have had a history-changing impact on the beauty space. That is a fact. And
Absolutely.
because we are independent and we don't have boatloads of investor money to just feed into marketing, feed into advertising, so much of what happens in beauty, especially now, and it was always this way, but it's really this way now, it's pay to play. It's pay to play for mainstream publications, for press. It's pay to play for influencers. It's pay to play across social media. It's pay to play in the ad space. All of those are insanely high expenses that if you're a small brand like us, it's just not in there to invest in that. And We have always been really strong on investing in the parts that really matter. And that's why our ingredients get better with every batch, why the recipe can't change. And yet people will use our formulas and go, I have been using this for a dozen years. Why does this feel so much better? And it is. It's better every time. You don't have to change much to make little incremental improvements across the board constantly. And that's all we do. That's all we do.
May, these were my next two questions around the formulation. So you answered that. I was thinking, but I love like how you have framed it. The ingredients, the formulations have not changed, the recipe has not changed, but the ingredients have gotten better. What beautiful way of evolving in the right direction without sacrificing the integrity of your formulation or running zigzag or spreading yourself too thin. Amazing. Absolutely love it. Tell me about packaging. So we understood the formulation evolution. I got it. You
Mhm.
worked with the farmers, your relationship has improved, the ingredients have gotten better, the recipe hasn't changed. What about the packaging? Has the packaging stayed the same? And is there a lesson there?
Mm.
Mass brands need to adapt to societal trends and changes, like I mentioned, but niche brands, especially if it clicks, should not tinker too much. Is that a takeaway? Like, was that a branding thing that, because it plays with memory structures? You don't want people, if somebody associates male Lindstrom with certain structures in their mind, these are called category entry points, those links, associations. Was that the reason, or there was something else? Very curious to know.
Well, a few things in that direction. Number one was, again, if I look back in time, all right, so when I hired my packaging designer, it was,
By the way, that was my next question, but yeah, continue.
yeah,
Combine these
okay.
two together. Yeah.
So this was late 2009. Late 2009, I found my packaging designer after placing an ad on Craigslist. So this was the heyday of Craigslist time. I got everything on Craigslist, including my packaging designer, it turns out. But I was young. I was 26. Let me see, is that right? Yeah, I was 26 at that time. And I wrote a love letter to the internet. This was this was my Craigslist call out, and it had everything in it. It had um, a song link to this song about was about shimmering gold. Anyway, it was I had
In
only
your
been planning.
Sorry to cut you short. You're saying in your brief to the designer, you send this
Yeah.
song. Love it.
In
Continue. Yeah.
in my open letter to the Craigslist designers. So this wasn't even to anyone specific. I had not hired anybody. This was me at 26 going, okay, I have been to set every day this week, and every person on set said I am an idiot if I don't start bottling these formulas that I'm carrying around. And so I was finally like, all right, well, what would it mean? What would it mean to bottle just the good stuff? Right? Because again, I thought, well, this is pretty, it's sexy, I can put it in some beautiful packaging. I'll sell that to the fancy people. I felt okay with that idea because I was so scared of sharing the actual heavy hitting formulas. I was terrified to introduce people to the problem solver. It's insane. It is so effective, so powerful, but it gets hot and it's messy and it's a whole thing. You have to learn about it to participate. You can't just slap it on your face and wash it off and expect miracles. It requires relationship. And so I had all these formulas that I thought would just require too much work or that I would have to dumb down for the public market. I could go into someone's home and walk them through how to use bespoke formulas. Anyone hiring me bespoke was on board to do anything that I asked for them to do to try in their skin. But the idea of just putting something on a shelf and knowing that it had to be understandable enough to put on a shelf and walk away and to know that people could pick it up and use it. I didn't know how to do that. Oh, where am I going with this? Uh,
With the packaging. Yeah.
with the packaging.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I
I,
just
I
thought,
just
well,
felt a
Phil,
little better about myself. You just made me feel a little better
oh,
about
don't worry, I
my.
get lost too.
Yeah.
Um, but I was really thinking if I just do the good stuff, I can package that pretty and it'll be a way for me to practice selling something without exposing the parts of me that felt vulnerable. I didn't want people to reject my formulas. and they were weird. They were different than what was out there in every way. And so I did not feel like anyone could possibly reject the good stuff. It was just too clearly beautiful. And so I got on Craigslist and I wrote a letter about this vision that I had, and I could see the packaging in my head. I knew that it had to be extraordinarily beautiful. I wanted to make the aspirational thing that would go on somebody's vanity and not be tucked away in a drawer. And so I wrote that and I included a link to a song. I included a photo of this field full of daisies. There was just a whole thing. It was like a dating profile, but it was just a one page Craigslist ad. And in response, I got, as you would expect, lots and lots of students, lots of graphic design kind of newer people that were perusing Craigslist for odd jobs. And then I got a one sentence email from Rodney Kizia, who's my designer still today. And it said something like, "We should talk," with his phone number. and and I was like, well, I'm not calling that random number. And then he had left his website link, and I went and I looked at his website, and it was the real deal. It was brands I'd heard of, it was packaging I'd seen. And I wrote him back and I said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I don't want to waste your time. I don't know if you actually read the ad or not, or why you're even looking at these because you're a real deal designer and I'm some kid." And uh, he wrote me back approximately one more sentence and was like, "Yeah, we should still just meet." And every other response that I had were other artists really responding in kind, sending me back flowery responses and first stabs at logos and things, people excited and inspired by this random Craigslist ad post that I'd made. But none of them also felt like people who could take me to the real vision, the one that I was a little scared to acknowledge that I had, which was where I could actually see this world in which my skincare was everywhere. And um, I knew that if I picked one of those student designers, I wouldn't know how to get past the digital logo or whatever that they would send me to it becoming a physical object. Like I had the formulas. I didn't have to find a lab. I didn't have to do that, which is what most people have to do. So I had all of these designers who had reached back out, but they were all amateurs, they were all students, they were all just learning. And so um, I knew that they could get me a logo or help me think about like what the packaging could look like. But like, then what? Then what? Because I had the formulas, but I could see the paper. I could feel it in my hands. I knew what I wanted this to feel like when I was holding it. And I needed someone who understood how to get me there. And when I met with Rodney, my designer still today, I sat next to him at his computer and we sat down and side by side made our logo, like little piece by little piece, did it next to each other, laid out our printing for the glass, how it would all look. He was also who convinced me to not just launch the good stuff. I had set out thinking, well, let me just try to bottle one thing. Maybe I can get over my apprehension about selling with just this one thing. People already want it. They already want to buy it. If nothing else, the people on set who are going home with samples, they'll buy it maybe. And so I'd been thinking really small, but also I had this bigger vision. I could see it. And when I met with Rodney the first time we got together, we met at Fred Siegel and we stood in the store and he said, "Well, I could have brought samples of my work, but I could just bring you here and say, well, I did that and I did that." And he just pointed at things in the room that he had been involved with. And I just went, again, I don't want to waste your time. I don't have any money. Like, I live in a shitty little apartment. I have no savings. I've got nothing. I was working as a model and a makeup artist, both pretty reluctantly. I really wanted to be doing this. And he listened to my story. He had sat with me and seen me work on design. And he said, I very much believe in you. I think you need to do a whole collection. And he was right. He convinced me to launch 3 other products along with the good stuff. That's when the Problem Solver, the Clean Dirt, and the Use Do came in. And instead of it being a launch that was just this stunningly sexy, incredible body oil, I got to launch with formulas that really represented what I was capable of in the skin. And those formulas are so powerful and are still like massive bestsellers today. They're iconic today, unchanged, really. Um, Super special. So he's been with me for 14 years now, more than that, actually, just past 14 years. He predates my husband by just a few weeks. I found my designer on Craigslist, and not even 2 months later, met my husband, who is full partner in everything now.
Love it.
Oh, yeah. And then, but you
Yeah,
had asked like
yeah.
about keeping it the same. So like many things, right? We don't change much. We really don't change much. And the beauty industry is such a, it's like fashion, where there is a cadence that people are used to. They're used to you having a new product every season, at least. They're used to there being packaging changes or branding changes or website changes or something. And while I say all the time, we get better every day. We get better with every batch, changing very little. We get better all the time. We really have changed very little. Our packaging has been essentially the same for 14 years, which I actually think a was a big deal. But it was part of coming out of the gate so sure of my vision. And because I had Rodney and the ability to actually take that vision all the way through, because he could sit with me and sit with the paper and we could pick out gold foil that was exactly the right gold, not too green, not too orange. I'm very particular. You can probably imagine that looking at my world of choices and things that I've brought to fruition, but I'm very particular about all of it. And I wanted to be in on all of it. And so we made this beautiful packaging. It felt iconic. It felt like what I had hoped these women I'd been working with could have on their shelf. It was certainly as beautiful as what they were putting on their shelf on display. And now these formulas of mine that they'd previously hidden in their drawers could be proudly displayed um, out for their enjoyment and for their delight as they reach in. It's such a different feeling to reach into a pot of something beautiful than into something that's, again, reminding you of the parts that are broken. So there wasn't changes to the packaging all of these years. It's actually interesting timing for that question because we're about to do a little bit of a packaging change, and it'll be the first time in 14 years. It's subtle.
14 sounds
It's,
a good number for some reason. February 14, Valentine's Day. So 14, I think it's, yeah.
I think
What
so too. And
what kind of
there's,
change?
it's very small. Okay. Oh, since you're here, hang on. Need to be able to grab that. So no one else can see this, but if you look on here, you see this keyhole kind of
Yeah.
shape.
Yeah.
It makes it look like a label, but it's not a label. These are printed on there. And I think the keyhole's gonna go. It's it's a very subtle change. The dandelion stays the same, the glass stays the same. But I think we're dropping that that exterior shape. It just feels a little cleaner, feels a little bit more modern, but it still feels like us. It's the most nothing change of changes.
Right.
It's actually
Almost
the
nothing.
shape that our body oils, we launched a 200 milliliter size a couple years back, and we previously had it at 100 milliliter. And the larger bottle just looked great with the new design. So that kind of got slowly released into the world in a test way, just with that different shape. But now I want it on everything because I like consistency. Actually, within the next couple months, probably, the Jasmine Garden will be the first to get that reprint. We actually just updated that formula too, which again, We make such small changes. I think we've had 2 changes to the jasmine garden in all of its years. Again, very small. This is actually not any different on the ingredient deck. It's just a different source of our cacao. So there's little changes like that. A few years back, the jasmine garden, we switched from a witch hazel in the base to a rose cellular water that's stunning. So there'll be little tweaks along the way where if I find an ingredient that's better or a source that's better or something that meets the skin's needs a little better for that particular formula, I'll consider a change, but mostly I just get out of the way. I I don't know, we struck some sort of miracle early. And I say we, it's just because it feels weird to say I, but these are my formulas and I was young. And I think the first years of our business, I had insecurity around that, waiting, ah, imposter syndrome, waiting to get called out by somebody. Who is she to X? Yeah, I'm a high school graduate. I didn't go to college. I'm not a chemist, other than that I do chemistry all the time. But I'm not a trained chemist. I'm not a trained formulator, other than that I've literally been doing this since I was 5 years old. So I don't know. I think it took a long time for me to give myself credit for all those years.
Well, you should have given it right from day one. In the past, for the past 1 minute, I was looking for the transition, and you gave me the perfect transition, my understanding of what you have done. Everything that the strategy speaks about, and I know you have never looked at those decks, you have not studied, but you are saying very similar stuff in terms of the process. Like you spoke about first work on functional, make it work. Then you said add a layer of emotion. Then you spoke about adding a layer of service. This is step by step in my slides. If you go to my slides, you'll find this. So the transition was when you said you're a high school graduate, right? You're a self taught business genius, I have to say, original plus genius, because sometimes more often than not geniuses imitate these days, right? So it's original has that charm, and you are the OG, if you ask me, of luxury skincare, especially such authentic. And I'm absolutely blown away by how you managed to create a packaging that every beauty founder, every skin founder like points to the designer. And when you were talking about that gold, I don't know how many times I must have listened to. I don't do design and stuff, but like when they're talking to a designer and I'm there, they're all talking about gold plating or some kind of. And I always used to wonder where that comes from. And then obviously I knew that they would not admit that it comes, they've seen it on mail Lindstrom, but they would also say, I want something like this. I want something for myself. And I know they were trying to imitate you. But tell me, May, what is the biggest hurdle to your next big goal? You seem like a person who lives in the moment, but do you also have like some ultimate goal or the next big goal for May Lindstrom? Very curious to understand. Get inside your mind. Yeah.
Mm. My goal is to keep doing what we do better every day, better every batch. It's so simple. It's so simple. I can get way in my head and get scared. I can get really spun out about existential things. I can look around at brands like mine that seem to be closing left and right, or selling, or changing. It can be easy sometimes for me when I'm outside of myself to look around and get scared. But when I go back to my own self, when I come into my own bathroom in the morning and at night, I remember what it's for. And every single morning when I wake up, all I do all day long, I sit here in this seat, just right where I am now on this same computer, and I talk to our clients all day long, all day long. That's all I do. And
Who are
I
these
hear
clients? You do one-on-one consultations? Like,
mm,
how does this? Yeah.
lots of ways. I'm still super active. I'm in all the DMs. I answer all the comments. Everything that you see on Instagram, that's all me. That's 100% me. Nobody has my login. If I say something crazy, it's me. Um,
Now I know.
I,
Everybody knows, right? Yeah.
yes, it's me. So that part's really personal. I should hand that off. I should have handed it off years ago, but I love it. It feels really important. I used to be in every single email that was sent to our customer service, and that's years behind. We have the Care Bears, and they're phenomenal. But I'm still in there pretty frequently. There'll be things that the team needs or needs different kind of insight. Um, they're not estheticians or formulators. Our Care Bears are not. They are hearts. They are people who totally will hold you as you find your way into our world. But if there are specific skin conditions, skin concerns that would benefit from my eyes are there every day. So often the replies are coming from a Care Bear, but I'm in on it. I'm there, I'm seeing it, and lots of direct communication. Still very much mine. And I still meet clients in person. I'm still available rarely for consult, but largely it's online. And I'm finding where the questions are and trying to find answers. I'm finding where people are looking for support, and I'm trying to bring support. So I just get reminded constantly of why this is important. I think I could get really distracted if I was trying to think too much about how to grow or how to keep a business like ours going, or we we haven't changed our obstacles. We have the same obstacles we always have. We're still 100% customer funded brand. I'm still not interested in being in every retailer everywhere. I'm not interested in paying a bunch of people to talk about us. We don't do that. We don't do any of that. And I know that if we did, and if we had the resources for it, and we had the experts behind it, we could be a significantly larger company. And that might be great with the right support. And what we're doing right now.
Quick question on the same.
Mhm.
How would you do it? There is a way retailers are doing it, there is a way influencers are doing it. What is May Lindstrom's universe world like if you were to grow the way you want to grow? Forget about how these people are doing it. What's that? What would you love to see happen for you to venture and start growing and not do it the way it is happening right now? Sorry, I cut you short, but I just
No, that's perfect. If every single person who has ever been impacted by our world, whether because you have experienced our formulas, experienced what they do for the skin, seen your own transformation, whether you're a lifer and this is what you use morning and night constantly, or whether you have watched us from afar and you just follow us in stories and continue to use what you use and you're never going to shop from us. If we have touched you, if we have impacted your world in some way, um, whether it's your relationship with your skin or how you run your own business, how you move through the world in relationship to yourself and others, whatever it is, wherever we've had impact, if every person in our community went and told one other person, just one, game changing, just game changing. And I know that to be true. And so we focus on every person, we focus on every individual. People ask me, why do you still spend your days answering DMs? Shouldn't that be a customer service job? Surely your time can be better allocated somewhere else, especially when we have moments of financial challenge, which happens as a self-funded company. Um, People will tell me all the time that my time should go other places. But I drop into my DMs and there's not a day where I don't read a message from a specific person that gives me all the fuel that I need to keep doing this for the rest of my life. There's nothing else that has more reward in it than what I receive directly from our clients every single day. And that's what they're saying to me. That's what they're saying to us. We get told all the time that it can sound silly, it can sound trite, but finding the relationship with your skin, finding comfort in your own skin, it can change a life. It can change everything.
tell me,
So,
May. Yeah, sorry.
no, please.
So there are two implications. The strategy that you spoke about, I love it. I speak about always the same stuff always, that how you go viral is like every person who knows about you, if they tell at least one person, you'll go viral.
Hmm.
But there's an opt-in rate. I came up with these definitions. Not everybody speaks. Let's say 1 out of 5 speaks.
Yeah.
So implication is that every word of mouth marketing initiative you undertake, even if it's a simple email asking them to give a gift to their friends, if it's 1 upon 5, you need to make sure that one person who does speak about you speaks to at least 5. So that
Hmm.
becomes the mathematics. But the point is, this applies to direct to consumer. So are you trying to say that now your focus is only going to be DTC? And if yes, great, I'm with you, and this is the strategy. And I love it. You're on track. It might be slow.
Hmm.
Strategy without tactics might be a slow route to victory, but tactics without strategy are just the noise before defeat, right? But are you also considering retail? And if retail, what would you like to see change? How would May Lindstrom, if she decided to retail again, how would you, what's the right way to do it for you?
Mm.
Or retail is a no already?
Yeah, it's not a known. I think, well, in 2020, we closed all of our retailers overnight and cut off half our business overnight. And the next few years were actually incredibly important for our business. One, that first year, I was scared that choice might just kill us. That's, I knew that it would be one thing or the other. It would be either be an affirmation of our direct to consumer experience, which was already by far our biggest input in shortly before the pandemic. If you had added up all of our retailers across the entire world, they were smaller altogether than mainlandstrom.com. What wasn't smaller was their impact. All of those retailers are where people go to discover brands like mine. And so not being in those places for discovery is actually a really big deal. We sold way more than any of those stores. We sold more than all of those stores put together. That's
Wow.
unbelievable by
Wow.
in general, by the way. We're very, very proud of that. And so we had that going for us. And going into 2020, we knew that. But what I didn't know was if people would stay. If they weren't discovering us in those stores, would they find us? We knew that once people found us, they stayed. Once people are in our world, they're in. But getting new eyes to us was something that went out the door when we closed our wholesale business. And we went from being very visible, being a given in all of the best beauty stores across the globe, and specifically all of the natural beauty stores, all of the green beauty, clean beauty, etc. stores. Like we were it. We were primary in all of those locations. So whether you were new to that space or whether you were just arriving and curious, you'd find us. When we stopped being on those shelves in 2020, I didn't know what that would mean for new eyes. We had also not spent a single penny on advertising until 2020. Not a penny. That
Wow.
was a lot of years to have done zero advertising, zero PR, zero paid sponsorships, zero any of it. And we just turned off our visibility even more when we closed all those stores. And then what was incredibly affirming was our clients came with us. We grew. We grew that first year. We grew 2020. We grew 2021. It was amazing. I was so scared. It felt very right. I had wanted to focus on our direct to consumer experience exclusively for a long time. We're a very small team. Again, we're a small team. We do pretty impressive things with the amount of human bodies that we actually have doing our very physical, very intimate work. And I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure what was going to happen. I wanted to do our direct to consumer business. I wanted to do it exceptionally well. I wanted to be able to pour all of our focus into it. I had spent the years previous flying around the world, doing trainings at different retailers, doing events. But I would train teams. I would spend hours and hours and hours with teams in every state and all these different countries. And 6 weeks later, they'd have an entirely new staff. And I would fly somewhere to do an event. I'd leave my children, I'd leave my team. And it wasn't my event. It was some store having an event. And those 20 people who came or 50 people who came was wonderful. But it's so fleeting. And it was my life. It was a huge amount of resources and personal energy to fly around telling my story to people who weren't going to be there to pass it on 6 weeks later. And there was just many things that retailers couldn't offer that I had really hoped that they could. And I have slightly unreasonable expectations, so I will just acknowledge that. The way in which I am obsessive about our service and the quality of care, the depth of care, the warmth of care is such a big deal. And it's not a given that retailers are going to offer that same service. And it's not a given that I should expect that. I want to be teacher's pet. I want to be everyone's favorite. And I would want the teams to know everything about our products, know everything about our story, and to be able to convey it in the way that we do. And that's just an unreasonable expectation when every other store has dozens or hundreds of other brands that they are also in relationship with. And so it was bittersweet for me because I could either compromise what I desire from a partner, lower my expectations, and become just another brand on the shelf, or I can acknowledge that it's okay to want to give the best. It's okay to want to be the best. And I really, truly believe that what we offer when people shop with us directly, we ship fresh from our kitchen lab, right where everything is made. It's our hands, the special little touches that go out, the experience start to finish from our website to long after you've placed your order. It's the sequence of relationship, and it matters. All of those pieces matter. So I have really high expectations for retailers. I am open to the idea, and it's been almost 4 years that we've been off retail shelves. Just in recent months have I started really feeling out the idea from a fresh place of what would it look like to do this again, to do this now. And when 2020 came and we closed our wholesale business, we could barely keep up with our orders as it was pre-pandemic. We were working as hard as we could, getting orders out as fast as we could.
You did not close your brick and mortar retailers because of pandemic. It was pre-pandemic.
No, it was at the pandemic time, but just ahead of that, I'll say, the years leading up to that, we couldn't expand anymore. Like we couldn't keep up with our own demand.
Got it.
And so when the pandemic came and there was well, what are we going to do if we can't make more product or we're not sure how that's going to go or how are we going to be able to do that? We needed to reduce the volume. And so we turned off our wholesale business. That excess capacity allowed us to keep serving Lindstrom.com and fulfilling those orders instead of making all this product that we were shipping off to people who weren't going to be able to pay their bills, who were probably going to file for bankruptcy, who were closing their stores. There was no reason to keep shipping product that direction. So we just made the decision in what we thought might be temporary. I mean, if you remember, early 2020, we all thought if we were on our best behavior, this was a 2-week ordeal, right?
Everybody
Do you
thought so.
remember?
Yeah.
Two
Yeah. Yeah.
weeks. If
Yeah.
we could just get ourselves together for 2 weeks, this is it. And then I was like, well, maybe it's more like 2 months. Maybe it's more like 2 years. Maybe it's more like 4. Who knows? But at the time, nobody knew anything. There was no answers. And what we did know was that we did intimate work in close proximity with other people, and we were barely keeping up with our Lindstrom.com orders and our wholesale orders as it was. We were growing super fast, and we do very special work. And so people who were with us a long time, they would see we would have something for limited release and it would be instantly sold out, or we would do things on waitlist or have really kind of complex rollouts if we did launch something new. We did a formula update for the honey mud and it took us 3 months to get through a waitlist. We had 11,000 people on our waitlist and 5 people making product. So, um, the feats that we have accomplished are impressive. And where was I going with this? It was,
Like, if you were to go back to retail, or do you
mhm,
want to, how would you do so? Maybe your growth is amazing. If you're growing over 20% year on year with DTC, maybe you don't have to go to retail. But I had a couple of suggestions. I'm pretty sure you've thought of them. One could be a concept store of male Lindstrom, like Apple does, like really flagship. And second could be an experience within a store, not a store within a store.
mhm.
Experience male Lindstrom within a store. Have you thought of that? Where you can control, and the people there, staffing would be your people.
Well, if I wanted to enter the world of physical retail, I would enter the world of physical retail. Oh, well, this is what I was saying. So before we closed our wholesale business, we could barely keep up, is what I was saying. Over the course of the pandemic, when we got to just pause and only focus on our direct consumers, we had so much extra space because we weren't managing a whole world of other accounts. I wasn't flying around training people. I wasn't on with people. We weren't um, shipping so much product to people that we weren't in direct relationship with. Shipping wholesale is great because you send a great big box. It's worth many thousands of dollars. You pay one shipping fee. It goes out there, and then the retailer breaks it up and ships it to all the individual people, and they do all the individual care. And it's all very convenient. But also, we're not touching any of those individual people. We don't know what they're learning. We don't know how to go deeper with them. There's not follow up. Um, but Anyway, so there's a lot of really convenient things to shipping a big wholesale order somewhere. There's something really special that happens when you get to do it one-on-one the way that we do, direct from us. Um, but what was happening was we couldn't keep up with any of it to begin with. And when we turned off our wholesale, we were able to expand our offerings for our directs and really lean into our processes. We spent 2020 to 2023 really improving systems across the board. We have essentially the identical team to 4 years ago, and we can produce probably 2 or 3 times as much product.
Wow.
We went 10 years where I couldn't send a newsletter without checking with my team to make sure that we didn't sell too much. We didn't advertise or do any marketing, not because we didn't want to, although I didn't want to, but because we couldn't keep up. There wasn't a lack of demand. We came out of the gate and couldn't keep up from day one. I spent 10 years building a company with the brakes on, is how I've always described it. I would look around and all of my competitors were like, how do we grow? How do we grow? How do we grow? There's all these templates for how to grow a business. And I'm like, I can't even send an email. You know what I mean? How do I slow this down? I can't keep up. And we were growing with our retail presence at the same time and growing in our press presence at the same time. And there was just so much growth happening and it was too much. And being able to take a few years, and we took that time, we improved our equipment, we improved our spaces, we improved just our work experience for our people. We also implemented a 401k. We gave everybody massive raises. We did a huge amounts of money towards great charities, especially food charities. Um, so we took those years when I could have been thinking about growth. I could have been thinking about wholesale. I could have been thinking about our retail presence in the world. And instead, we just doubled down on who we are. We make the best. We share it with love. And that's it. It's not really complicated. You ask about other brands, other founders, what are they missing? It's the basics. Why are we here? What are we doing? Why does this matter? This
You know what?
matters so much.
What fascinates me about accomplished, superlatively successful people like you, whether it's Michael Jordan or Serena Williams or you or anybody who has reached the apex, like the top, that every time they come and tell what it takes is such fundamental advice, which people don't grasp. Like you said, the basics, right?
Mhm,
But just like the book Alchemist, you have to travel the whole world and come back and find the treasure in your own backyard. I firmly
mhm.
believe in it. So clarity is way important than knowledge, and that's what you get, and the other founders don't have. That's what I feel. Like you're saying, it's all basics. Even I go horse telling people you should do this. There's nothing new in what I tell people. It's just basics, but it still amazes you just because they've not internalized. They don't feel it yet. They don't have that absolute clarity which you have. Like you said, when you worked with a designer, you knew exactly what you wanted, right? Clarity is very hard to come by. I shouldn't say this. It sounds like it's, and I don't want to demean you or offend you, but they usually, I'm reading this book called Hidden Potential by Adam Grant. So I can blame it on this guy. So he says, those who can do might not be able to teach. Usually they say those who cannot do, they teach, but he says those who can do, just because they get it. You know what I mean? They are so above the others. Like the other people still have to travel that road. I'm absolutely with you. Like you have internalized that it's in you, mate, right? So and that's what amazes me. Like I know it's a bit of a tangent, but I told you I'm a master of tangents, right? I was speaking to a founder. When I started, I would send up PPTs, etc., videos, etc., and I was afraid if I share all the knowledge, I need to charge. I realized that no matter what I did with her, in the end, I'm the guy who has to work on it. So I think that's it. I think it's your magic. And the long story short, the implication is that you are happy with DTC growth. And you are probably the only person who has to, like you're saying, putting brakes on. My God, that's what a brand is. If there's a definition of brand, like it's building desire, right? And maybe you're the only beauty brand on the planet for whom, I shouldn't say blessing in disguise, but maybe pandemic was a blessing in disguise because retailers built all that awareness for you. They got all the trials, and obviously you pulled back because you had to, but then you got all of the consumers back, so you don't need them anymore, right? But a concept store is for the impact that you're having on people, the experience that you create. You're talking about bottling love, which was one of my questions. I don't know how many people have copied your line of bottling love, but they're not able to do it. And you kind of answered that, and we've been discussing that. I personally feel that one concept store of male Lindstrom, right? But maybe you won't be able to sit in your bathroom then and then have that conversation with people every day. You might be able to touch more lives if it's possible.
Well, the powerful thing that came out of spending the last really close to 4 years really just honing in on our systems is we do have this capacity now. I spent 10 years unable to send an email because it would bring too much activity, right? And now, for the first time, the last couple of years, it's the first time in this whole trajectory where I've been able to look around and go, we have space. We can actually make more product than I can move right now. That's never happened before, ever. We've done all of this with the brakes on. We don't have to have the brakes on anymore, is the new learning. And so I think about what's next. And I think you were asking earlier, what's in the way of what's next? Something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. What's the biggest hurdle?
The biggest hurdle is usually me. I am usually what gets us over that hurdle, but I am also very much usually the hurdle itself. I can be a bottleneck because I am so perfectionistic and I have such high quality standards, and I'm really just obsessed with this experience. But the last 4 years, we've honed in on our systems in such a way that there is spaciousness. It's the first time in the history of our company where I can look around and dream again. If I couldn't send an email before because it would generate too much activity and we'd sell out, think about the possibilities of what it means now when we could actually do significantly more business with the exact same team of a better quality than we've ever offered before. It's huge. So I think I'm still just mentally adjusting to the idea that actually there's nothing in the way. There's nothing in the way. And every day I'm reminded how many more people are hungry for what we offer. Yes, in the general way where people are picking up on the inspiration in all the ways they do just watching us, but more specifically for those who really are ready to lean in and feed this to their skin. We have more new customers every day. I think for a long time, I thought that there was a honeymoon phase or something. We started this movement in this space, and there was a lot of excitement around the coming up of something different in this space, and we got to be in on that. There was a lot of, I don't know, a celebration in that and joy in that and newness in it. And this many years in, I can be a little pessimistic because it's not the honeymoon phase anymore. It's something else. But this year 14 moment, it really does feel like a thing. I think that there's cycles and it feels like we've just entered another one. Maybe there was the first 7 years and then there was the second 7 years. And I feel like we're entering into our third cycle of seven in a way.
That's the feminine energy that I was talking about. The cycles, the moon phases, I love, man. When I see your branding, sometimes I go, my God, how can somebody come up with such amazingly resonant imagery, branding, talk? Just absolutely blown away. So, quick question on that.
Yeah.
So now, I won't leave you. I'll keep drilling.
I'm not going
So
anywhere.
you said, so we first started with more demand than you can handle. Then you said
Hmm.
now it's a phase, the third cycle, where you can produce more than the demand is there. So
Hmm.
obviously that means you are looking at increasing the demand, right? So
Yeah.
what are those top, if you wish to divulge, if not, it's fine. What are those top 1 to 2 things that you're thinking of doing to now stimulate demand and bring it in line with your way increased capacity?
Well, this is where I get to feel like a year one brand. And that's actually been really good for my ego, actually, because there's new things that I'm learning again. Um, so I said earlier that I've just replaced myself over and over, right? There was just me, and then there was four of us, and then there became four departments, and then there became more people in each department. So I've just been doing that, doing that. Oh, shoot. What was the first thing you asked me?
Same stuff. Like, what are you doing to now stimulate demand?
So in the beginning, it was we had to learn how to. So I made these formulas and I was mixing them all myself. When I brought in other people, then they had to learn how to make it, and then I had taught people how to ship it and taught people how to answer questions about it. And so over time, I built our kitchen lab department. That's a department. I don't go in, I don't generally make things in the lab anymore unless I'm making something new or I'm troubleshooting something. But I'm not in there. I'm not in the lab anymore. I used to wrap every package by myself. I'd go to post office every day by myself, like physically take it there every day, baby under one arm, boxes under the other. Now there's a shipping department. I'm not in shipping. I'm not touching those boxes anymore. It's not the same thing. So I have a kitchen lab. I have that department. I have the shipping. I have that department. I used to send every email, and then I slowly had people come and help me, and now I have the Care Bear. So there's a whole department there, right? So I have those departments that work. You know what I never built? A marketing department,
For demand, right? Demand, and that's what
which,
my question. Yeah.
yes, because in the beginning, I didn't need a marketing department. I couldn't keep up. I don't know what was happening out in the world, what kind of magical little stream of connection I got in people's subconscious, but it was, I can't explain how people learned about us in the beginning and shared about us. I have to just thank the universe for that because I don't think it could be recreated. But now I look around and I go, all right, I've got a shipping department, I've got customer service, I make the product, all those things are covered. Well, I'm going to need people to talk about it. I need people to find us. And most skincare brands, they start literally the exact opposite. They start with a marketing department. Do they make it? Probably not. Do they ship it? Probably not. Do they have Care Bears? Certainly not. They have marketing, they have advertising, they've got a great website and great catchy ads and marketing language that's been tested over and over to see how humans will behave when shown version A versus version B. And there's whole groups of people, that's all they think about is how to game it. And I think that I can look at that in a more positive way and see the fun in that game. It is about finding people and connecting after all. It doesn't have to be a big scary thing. Marketing, advertising doesn't have to be negative. But I think I had that perception in my head a bit. And because it wasn't a necessary part of our business or even an optional part of our business for a long time. I mean, if I imagine if I'd been able to advertise in our early years and we'd been able to keep up, I'm telling you, we would have been a massive brand. And I don't know that would have been better. And so, us having 14 years to develop and become so hardcore in the things that we are actually committed to, I am unwavering. There's nothing that shifts me off of my path here. This either is a success and we're in it, or it fails and we're out of it. But there's not a part of me that compromises to make this something that it's not, to make it bigger. And so I look around now and I go, wow, this is the first time ever, after all of the success, after all of the revenue, after all of the accolades and everything else. Right now is the only moment in our whole history where I've had a full team. And I'm building the marketing part of our team now. I'm learning new things. Like I have a Canva account. I just started learning how to use it. I'm watching videos on YouTube. I'm thinking about hiring. We don't hire very often. We do so much with the team that we have, and our team stays. We've only had team members since 2014, and the average person has been with us from 5 to 9 years.
Wow. Wow. That's amazing.
It is amazing. And so there's not a lot of expansion that happens with that. We're not usually looking for new people. And it's been a long time since I have tried to build something totally new. And building a marketing department in a year 14 business is hilarious, frankly.
Absolutely it is. Yeah. But not for me. Not for
No,
me. Yeah.
I think it's really fun and but it's definitely new to me and I bristle at so much of it. And so you ask, well, how would Lindstrom Skin do it? How would Lindstrom Skin do this growth thing? Because everybody's looking at how to grow, and it's not surprising people want to know how I would grow. We've been so lucky to just grow one person by one person slowly because it's the only way we could do it for so long. Right now, we could increase our pace if we wanted to. We don't need to. We've got room. And so I can take my time. I'm trying to learn how advertising can feel good. I'm trying to learn, is there a reason why advertising has to feel as shitty as it does? I said the same thing about product labels when I was working on our packaging. It's like, why is it that the most functional formulas, the ones that are really doing something, why do they smell bad? Why are they packaged so ugly? Why do they say anti-itch on them? I don't know. It can be better. It can be more beautiful. The marketing version of that, the advertising version of that, you see all these catchy taglines, and half of them in beauty are ways of making people insecure. It's calling out skin problems. It's calling out these aesthetic things for us to correct. It's calling that out. And I just go, what if it didn't? What if advertising could be the same thing that I do in stories? What if it could be the same thing that I do in our newsletter? What if it could be the same thing that happens in my conversations with women in their homes, in their bathrooms? Why couldn't we, instead of just showing up, paying money to show up in people's feed, instead of impressing on them some urgency around something that they must buy, must correct, must fix? What if it was an invitation into the whole point? What if that also could feel good? And I don't know the answer to that because I don't know enough about these tools. I don't know enough about how the algorithms of advertisement work to know what works. And so I just feel really grateful to be able to be exploring it in this year one kind of way with some room.
You
Because,
you know everything, by the way. You just haven't defined it or put it as a process, but everything that you just said is what advertising should be. And it is what it is when it does really well.
yeah, well, because it's interruptive. It's the nature of advertising, it's interruptive. And everything that we do, I want to be the opposite of that in terms of feeling. But if you're being interrupted by something pleasant, if you're being interrupted by something pleasurable, if you're being interrupted by something that is additive, I don't see how that's bad. And so my job now, as I think about this year one department, is how can I do the same thing that I did for the bottles? When I sat down to design this packaging, I said, well, what would happen if it was glass instead of plastic? What would happen if it was light protective glass instead of just whatever glass? What would happen if it was the heavyweight paper instead of the cheap kind that's printed white on the inside? What would happen if it was the velvety texture? What would happen if it was embossed? What would happen if it was gold? Asking those same kinds of questions that got me to this packaging that could hold its own and change a space for 14 years with no changes. Can't I do the same in these other areas?
Absolutely. Like, I'll say yes to anything that you say today, but even otherwise, I'm saying absolutely, absolutely. And I'm pretty sure everything that you are saying, I call them moments of resonance. So even if you take your target consumer and identify one situation in her life in a day, right? And just understand that situation, and the what is she feeling, what is she going through, what is she using. You spoke about them touching and feeling the texture on their bodies for the first time, right? And then what it means for them emotionally, functionally, right? What role will it play in their life, in whatever emotion that you are targeting? That can become advertising, right? I'll give you one more tip. Your brand will target a way broader audience. When you do marketing, it will get narrowed down. When you do advertising, you'll go more niche. We have covered almost all the questions, plus you covered the toughest time you had. I don't think we actually spoke about a very tough time for you, but I kind of figured out that when pandemic happened and 50% revenue you lost, but the fact that those people came with you and your brand was so strong that you actually didn't face the pressures that other beauty brands that closed or retailers face, right? But is there, very briefly, was there a very tough time in this journey of your entrepreneurial journey which was an existential threat to your business?
I would say that 2022 and 2023 were that for us. And I think it was definitely in our heads. There was something about 2020, I felt powerful. 2020, I felt powerful. We came into the year very strong in our business. And when the pandemic came and we received the notification, like everyone else, shelter in place, we're in California. We are a manufacturing company, technically. And so we had the ability to stay open as a manufacturing company, but not stay open in a way that felt good to us. We needed to be able to spread out our people and keep them safe. And so there was choices to be made about how we were going to keep going. Oh shoot, where was it going? What was your original question again? Sorry.
I have to say, I've never felt more at home in a podcast. I feel
Because
like,
I stop and be with you.
yeah,
Well,
yeah, because I do,
it's
like, it
it's
happens
how
to me.
conversations work. It's
Yeah.
because you have a thought and you spin off something and then it's like, but I care about this thing and it's coming in.
You're talking about 22,
Coming going.
23 being very
Oh,
tough for
yes.
you. Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. So because 2020, we were so strong as a business, as a company, we came into 2020 just feeling really good. We were in all these great stores. Our direct to consumer business was thriving, was far bigger than all of our global partners put together. When we got that notice that that there was this virus happening and we might not be able to stay open and what were we going to do? My husband and I immediately went into problem solving mode. We sent our people home. We've figured out what to do with the layout of our space. And then we looked at our accounts. We looked at how much inventory do we have here in our kitchen lab, how much of it is scheduled to be shipped out to our wholesale accounts. What does that leave for our directs? We were just looking at and managing all of those things. And when we made the decision to turn off our wholesale, that felt like a really smart decision. It was the way that we knew that we could extend our inventory further while we figured out how to take care of our people. And then we just got on this mission where it was like, all right, we can do this. We can keep paying our people. We can keep making our product. We can keep fulfilling our promises. And so it was rah, rah. I felt like a cartoon. We got our muscles out and we're like, we've got this. And we started providing food boxes from local CSAs for our team here in Los Angeles. And so our team would come once a week and they would pick up a food box. We were just trying to prevent people going to the stores and getting exposed. We really had to keep our team tight. We needed our people to keep working. And so we were doing everything we could to keep them safe. When we started bringing in the food boxes for them, it made me want to expand that. So then we started matching those donations with Feeding America, which we'd already been very actively involved in. We've sent now literally millions of meals to Feeding America. Yeah, big deal. Great
Yeah.
organization. And so 2020 was like, this is really hard. And look at us. Look at us. We're doing it. And I felt so proud of us every day. I'd wake up and there'd be a hard decision and we'd make a great decision. And every day I'd be like, well, that was hard. And I feel so proud of us. I felt really proud of my team. I felt really good about the decisions that I was making in partnership with my husband. And then we get through 2020. Our business is stronger than ever. Our clients are more with us than ever. It was a financially successful year. It was an emotionally successful year. It was a very difficult year, but I felt so affirmed in what we were doing. And then 2021 came, and it was a little like, this is where it's existential. 2020 felt like the thing that could take out everybody, right? When the pandemic started, none of us knew if that was like going to be the end of the world. It was a little dramatic because we didn't know anything. And so when 2020 ended and it turned out the pandemic did not, in fact, wipe out us or our business, there wasn't that same kind of hero rah rah energy to it. It was okay, well, now it's just the next year. We have to keep working. We have to just keep doing what we're doing. And
Like more getting frustrated now, like it's just not ending.
yeah, it keeps going. I think there's uh it's like I have this picture of us like all shiny on our silver horses or something. Like, we've got this. We've got our team and we've got our clients and we've got our people and we're doing great and we're doing good in the world. And well, look at all these wonderful decisions we're making. It was, again, a little bit cocky and a little bit like self cheerleading. This is really hard. And look how good we're doing at being hard. We're doing good by our team. We're doing good by our people. I feel good and proud of our contribution. And then 2021 came and it just wasn't that same energy. It was like, oh, well, the pandemic didn't take us out. I wonder if something else will. And I think it was a difficult business year. Our growth slowed in 2021. We were still growing, but it wasn't as fast as it had been other years. So we were seeing the impact of not having the visibility of being on the shelves in all of those other places and having people talk about us in quite the same way. We had the rabid enthusiasm of our loyal clientele who were already with us, but there was much less people discovering us for the first time. And so it was a little quieter. And so 2021 was more looking around and going, oh, we did a bunch of scary things, including closing our wholesale business, which we decided to double down on. 2021 came around and we'd been off of store shelves for a year. And that was something I had wanted to do for many years. And the pandemic gave us a chance to try it, to test it, to say what would happen if we weren't here. in all these stores? What would happen if we just focused on our direct to consumer community? And what happened in 2020? We grew, we did great. In 2021, we went, oh, but we need to keep that momentum going and we need to find a way to have new eyes find us.
Yeah,
And that was just
top of the funnel suffered, right? The awareness suffered.
exactly. And so, and we're not a data-driven company that like until literally 2 months ago, I didn't have a single person on my team who was looking at data. For 14 years, we did not look at data. So there was a lot of luck in this and not a lot of data, not a lot of strategy. The strategy was, what does May want to do? What does she think is right? And
May
that
was right. May was not.
did.
May wasn't maybe right. May was right.
I was right. I was right. But then we came into territory that I didn't know. And I didn't know any of this territory when I started it, but I started most things at the same time. And starting this part of the business, well, okay, now that we're dialed in, now that we make this phenomenal product, now that we know how to ship this phenomenal product, now that we know how to talk about this phenomenal product, now that we'd covered all these foundational bases, how do we get people to know about it who don't know about it? How do we tell more people about it? And it's not my nature. I really like talking to people about our collection who are already interested, who are already on board, who have already started to dive in. I got excited to talk to you because you came to me with an email that showed me that you already knew. You are already on board. That's a really soft, cozy entry for me when I'm meeting people who've never heard of us, who have no
Really? Are
concept
there
of.
such people who haven't heard of male Lindstrom? I doubt it. Yeah.
Yes, there are. Of course, there are. And but sometimes I forget that too because I have been in this space for a long time. And so I get a little bit thrown off. Maybe if I am just seen as a new brand next to other new brands that people don't know about, and there's not a knowing of the history of what we've brought to this space, of how long we've been in it, of our reputation, of what it's built on. And it's just side by side. You see this person's skincare ad, you see this person's skincare ad, you see this person's skincare product, you see our skincare product. I think I was insecure that we would hold up to today. Sometimes I think that because we were first, we had a real edge. And obviously that's true. It's
But that
hard to be
also made you do
first.
the hard work.
Yes. And it's what comes across when you talk about copycat brands, our actual formulas, how many people have tried to copy the Blue Cocoon or our packaging or just our particular way of using words or descriptions or the language of things. I've seen that too. I've seen how we've changed the shape of things. I mostly consider it really flattering. Um,
Bottle of love, self
Bottle of
care.
love.
Yeah, I don't know how many founders, when they pitch to me, when I'm doing the call, they would say, my brand. I was like, yeah, it's love bottled. And I'm like, tell me more. And then slowly I start seeing mail Strom's copy, carbon copy coming to life. But like you said, imitation is a great form of flattery, right? Of course, you're disrupted. You became successful with disruption and you have had longevity. Not many disruptors. I did another podcast with a founder. She's in Sephora. She's doing pretty well funded. And she said she would never disrupt again because she would rather copy, be the second mover because it's so hard to disrupt. And in your
Mm.
case, you did it. Of course, it must have. I'm not saying business is not hard, but you did it with a formula that was working right from day one with demand being greater than what you could supply. It never happens. It reminds me of Friends. Have you watched Friends? Do you like watching Friends?
It's been a long time, but I'm familiar enough.
So Ross goes to a conference and a woman walks up to Ross and says, Ross, I'm a big fan. So Joey looks at Ross and says, wow, that never happens. You know what you have done? I love the fact that you're bootstrapped. I'm preaching to the choir now, but bootstrapped is the ultimate test there cannot be a bigger test. You've sacrificed a lot yourself, I'm pretty sure you have, to raise the entire category, to bring it to another level. I'm a man. I don't use much skincare, but I feel the love on your site every time I go and I look at those visuals. Absolutely blown away. I'm not just saying it for the sake of. You can think of it as I'm, like I said, if I'm medium for your metaphysical may points, and I'm the medium to pass them on to other beauty founders, I'm also channeling the demigod status that you have in the eyes of the founders that speak to me. You know what I mean? So it's a two-way loop. Yeah, well, that sounds like a blog I can write. Everything has worked out great for you, not because of luck. I just heard you saying that. It's your humility that you're saying it's because of luck, but I would say intuitively, you are like a book that people should study. And that's the whole reason for this podcast too, right? I truly understood how you are doing stuff that the best of the best do. So that's amazing. We'll move to now the speed round, man. I love this round. You have to give one to two, three word answer associations. This is just for fun, but there is more than fun, right? There's, of course, there's some insight. And I know you'll do great. So I'll say a few lines, a few words or phrases, and you have to, whatever first comes to your mind. And if you want to abuse, you totally can. I mentioned when I published the podcast on platforms that it is not for kids. So don't worry. You can be explicit. So, what are your thoughts on mainstream beauty? What do you think?
Mainstream for who?
Wow, that's I never thought of that. You always put a question back, right? What if
It was
mainstream
funny
beauty? Yeah,
because you
elaborate.
wrote that one down, and I remember reading that. And that's just actually what my head said in response when I think of mainstream. Here's what actually happened. I read the word mainstream, and my brain said river.
See, no wonder you're a genius. You think differently, right? So I also had this quote I wrote, and it got a lot of shares and likes. I wrote, "Normal is average." So be weird because you don't want to. Nobody wants to be. The worst thing you can do to a friend is just tell him that he's average. Nobody likes to be called an average. They would prefer to be weird. But yeah, if we are talking about mainstream beauty brands, right? What do you think of them? Or you don't even think of them? Wow, that would have been a great answer as well.
I would say I am my best when I am not thinking outside of myself.
Wow, love it.
It's, it's just it is really true. I feel a little out of the loop at the moment, actually. Probably the last 5 years, which has been a really interesting 5 years to have my eyes turned away. I think our first 10 years, I was so clued in to everything that was happening in our space. I knew all the brands that existed before us. I knew all the brands that were coming up alongside us. I was paying attention to all the cool new brands that were coming out in the years that followed. I was really tuned in. And the last 5 years have been such a process of really just refocusing on our internal, on our systems, on what makes us who we are, that I have no idea what's happening with other brands and in the beauty space right now. I don't know what retailers are cool. I don't know what brands are cool. I don't know what the cool kids are wearing on their skin if it's not us. I don't know any of it. I am so out of the loop. I am blind. I am operating blind. And when I started, I was operating blind. And I think that I do my best work when I've got my eyes closed. It's so important. When I look around and I look at other brands, I might, I'm wired this way. I get inspired easily, but then I can also be really critical. And so it might start by me being inspired by I'll see somebody's beautiful packaging, or someone's ad will catch my eye, or the photography will be stellar, or I'll notice them using ingredients that I love, or something will inspire me. But if I'm looking at their work, I almost automatically shift back to my own, and then I start thinking about improvements that could happen, or judgment, or something from a non-organic space. It's from a reactive space, from looking at what's out there. Where when I'm in the shower, and I'm using my actual formulas, or I'm in my DMs and I'm talking to somebody who's sharing their experience of using our formulas, everything that I need to know comes through. If it's what I'm going to write in this week's newsletter, that comes through when I'm showering. If it's what I want to talk about in our team meeting that feels important, it probably came through a DM. I did it again, forgot where I was going.
No, you asked you like, what do you think of other brands? And you were like, so
Yeah,
you're so in touch with your authentic self and what
it's
you
just,
want.
yeah.
Yeah.
If I'm looking around to other brands, unless I'm doing it on purpose, like right now, we're thinking about doing a rewards program, right? Just a straight up referral. I love word of mouth. Of course, we should be doing more to make it easier for people to share about us through word of mouth. It's so obvious. And can we make it exciting? Can we make it fun? And as a baseline to understand just the tech, what's even available to tie into our website. Just the tech stack of like, what programs exist that can allow us to make a referral program on our website. So there's only so many companies who offer that kind of integration with Shopify. We're hosted by Shopify. So looking at things like that. Shoot, I keep doing it. I wonder if this isn't interesting to me. Where am I going?
In the true spirit of wanderlust, tangents and wanderlust will be the theme of this episode because we both love doing that. I would love to jump back from speed round to a question that I forgot to ask and you were actually answering. And
Yes.
that's like the number one question, which was you mentioned how you created the brand and experience because you wanted it that way and did not even think of what people would buy in one of your episodes. I listened to it. Was this the first time you tried this approach to an initiative? Meaning you took something to the world that you fell in love with passionately or that you wanted to see in the world? Or is this a pattern that you have succeeded with throughout your life and now the belief is there? Because that's what he did with May Lindstrom. By the way, I'll give you my killer line on competition. Do you want it? Do you want to hear it?
Sure.
The only thing that you need to worry about competition is not be like them. This is my original. I don't know. Maybe it didn't impress you much, but I when I wrote it, I thought it's a great line. But any which ways, let's go to the question that I
Don't
just
be like
asked
them.
you.
Wait, take me back. My brain went so many places just now.
From speed
Um,
round back into deep dive.
mhm. I want to come back to that question. Say it again. What was the deep dive
So
one?
when I heard you in one of your podcast interviews, which is something you have reinforced in this call too, you mentioned how you created the brand and experience because you wanted it that way. Obviously, there is consumer research involved. You went into their homes, etc. But you did not even think if people would buy because of $220 blue cocoon. You said, was this the first time? This is the question that you tried this approach to an initiative, meaning you took something to the world that you fell in love with passionately or that you wanted to see in the world? Was this the first time with male Lindstrom skincare? Or this has been a pattern that you have succeeded with? Because this is very counter to the advice that is usually given. And you kind of took me through this by saying that you were interacting with the consumers. If you talk about the branding, the packaging, the visuals, the imagery, the content, the bottle of love, right? It came out of those, it had a tie to the consumers too, but still it was what you wanted to bring out, right? Or no?
It is. It is. And I'm thinking about, is that actually what I wanted to exist for me? And I don't know that I thought I was worthy of that care either, even when I was building it. I do now. But that's the difference between 25-year-old me who started this company and 40-year-old me who's living it out. 25-year-old me made these formulas. I still look at that and I can't believe she was 25. I can't believe any of the things that she had done in her life to that point. 40-year-old me has a whole different bucket of life stuff going on that's so different from what that 25-year-old did. 25-year-old me was talking to women in my age group now and older. None of my clients were 25. I definitely had self-consciousness around my age, around my authority, around all of that. And so when I was making formulas for these women, I was aspiring for them. I could see what they were hungry for themselves that they couldn't see. But what I couldn't see was that I was hungry too. And I hadn't met that own need for myself yet. I wasn't taking exceptionally good care of myself. I wasn't fully committed to my own tending, my own space. It would be 10 more years before I started any kind of practice with my body. I didn't do any kind of movement. I didn't have any kind of physical exercise practice or breath or meditation or spiritual practices or any of those things that are fundamental to my being today. When I started this company, those weren't there. So some of the things that I talk about now, coming into connection with ourselves and the smells and the scents and the touch, I can access all of that now because I have capacity to think about it. There's a luxury in even being able to think about whether this smells good, feels good, looks pretty on my shelf. I spent the first couple decades of my life in survival mode. I wasn't trying to make something beautiful for me. I was just trying to get by. And I thought that these women should have something beautiful. I
So,
didn't consider myself part of that then.
very insightful. So, is it fair to say that you did it your way, but you understood these women's pain points very well? Is that fair to say?
Yes, I think I didn't know what they were going through because I hadn't been all the way there. I hadn't had uh
Then how did you do it?
mm,
You were ordained, like was it like a full moon night and you went outside and
okay, think about it like it always comes back to cooking for me. I think about um some of the best chefs that I've known in my life, some of the best cooks that I've known in my life, didn't have access to particularly fancy ingredients, but they have that part in their head that knows what would happen if they did, that knows what they could do if they did. So you might have a home cook who's making dinner from canned foods or whatever came from wherever, and that's enough for where they are in their life. But maybe they watch cooking shows or are inspired by chefs who have something else, right? And so they might watch another chef who has all these other ingredients, has all this other stuff going on, and their imagination can take them there. They can think about what it could be. They have their experience. They also know what could be. And somewhere in there, that gap might get filled where that home cook using canned foods from their mother's pantry someday gets a lemon zester and now has this very novel thing of using lemon peel in something, which is a fancy move. This feels like such a departure of a conversation, but it's not. It's like
not?
I didn't have access to luxury. I had never had a luxurious moment in my life when I was working with these women. I,
So just to yeah, exactly on this point. So in your mind, you imagined what you want to give to these women.
yes, and they did not want it for themselves yet. They didn't even know, but I did. I could see. I was like that chef who could tell that if I had access to these better ingredients, these better equipment, this just knowledge, just education, just more time, more experience,
But you
that
understood their needs. You understood their problems. Or no? Or no? Or you just wanted to give it to them and them to experience it?
Let's say that you have a mother who's never given herself anything nice.
So you did understand. Yeah.
I understand that people are afraid to ask for something beyond what they already have. I think that change is difficult, even when it's good change. I think that the women that I was meeting with had a hard time believing that their skin could ever be any different. I think they had a hard time believing that their relationship to their skin could be any different. Um, they didn't have much risk with me. I was there as a volunteer saying, let me feed your skin. Let's see what happens. And they would entertain me. And over time, it went from, wow, this actually takes away the itch. This takes away some of the pain. Wow, that felt really comfortable. That was really nice. To later, when we would get through that functional part, they could understand that they had something acute to be corrected because that was really familiar language. They knew what that was all about. They were used to reaching for the anti-itch cream. That's what you put on the itch. Now it's gone. So they understood that skincare could meet a functional need, and I could do that for them. What was new to them was that it could feel good, that it could smell good, that it wasn't synthetic stuff that was hurting while trying to fix them. And so I would make something with oils or with a combination of plants and it would smell interesting and they would smell it and they go, this is really interesting. What's that? And then if they were responding to smells, the next time I would bring them something that was more intentionally aromatic in that way. And I'd see their faces light up. and
So
and I would
experimentation was a part of it. Like there was some experimentation and
oh, yes, yeah. And when working with clients on bespoke formulas, that was the whole idea. These were custom. And so the initial cry for help might be, no, I have really bad scarring, or I have these sores from the radiation. They might come with something functional like that. I would give them the formula that would address the functional part. And then because it was so different than anything they'd ever used before, I would see their eyes sparkle. I would see this other part of them light up. And so it was in that I realized that nobody's going to consistently use a product unless it feels good. I remember years ago, my mom, who has similar skin, there was some bottle of something that she found at some point in her own skin journey that I remember her wearing, some plant-based oil, and it smelled so bad. It smelled terrible. But it helped my mom and she put it on her skin. And I remember smelling that and thinking, that's really a bummer that you have to smell like that, both for yourself and for anyone around you. And she used it for a while and then she stopped using it, even though it helped her more than almost anything else at the time. And the same thing would happen with my clients. If I made them something and it helped their skin, but it wasn't sensorially a win. If it didn't feel good, smell good, something else, if it just helped their skin, they would use it until the acute skin thing softened a bit, and then they would bring back in the things that felt good and usually fuck it up and usually revert back to what they were. And it would just be the cycle where you'd be fixing the acute thing and then recovering and then recovering and recovering. And when I started bringing in herbal elements that smelled good too, that felt good too, when I started formulating not just for result, but for the whole experience, I saw that these women went through their jars way faster. They were much more consistent in showing up for their own care. They would come to the bathroom morning and night, and not just on Sundays, not just if they were having a really acute flare up. And the more beautiful I made it, the more consistent they were. And so I was responding to that. And then as I saw that really did make a difference, and it was also just fun for me, I'd see these women who'd had such horrific relationships to their skin. Um, transform and get excited and like couldn't wait to see what else I was going to bring them. And I would leave and they would send me messages after going to the sink or going to the shower. And they were excited about taking care of themselves. After a while, I became excited about actually just having that time with themselves. And that was so different. That was something these women had lived decades and never felt before. It became so much more important than anything I could actually put in the bottle. The whole experience of it matters.
I agree. So there is science that you utilize. It's an art and science together. You were interacting with the consumers, you were doing experimentation. Feedback loop is very important. You were getting that. You found that compliance to routines or the products wasn't there, and then you learned that by interacting with them that if you do make them sensorial, it gets you more compliance. If you make it more beautiful, it gets more compliance. They keep it outside the counter, over the counter rather than under the counter. So love it. Now going back to the speed round, right? We keep going back and forth, but absolutely love it and absolutely love everything that you're saying.
Can I say one more thing about that?
Sure,
Just
sure,
because I
please,
think
please.
it's related. Um, so there's, it's like, if it's not beautiful and interesting and feel good enough, people won't use it. But if it's feels like it's too beautiful or too special, people won't use it either.
Wow, that's a killer. That's like the insight of the podcast. Tell me more. And you did touch on it before, but I wanted to elaborate again.
It's a thing that I
How do you make it less beautiful then? What's your process?
you can't make it less beautiful, or I will not make it less beautiful. The rest of the world can make less beautiful things, and that's fine. My job is to make the most beautiful thing I can dream. My second job then has to be convincing people that they actually are worthy of that. And I did say it earlier. It is why it says all over the place in our world, you are worthy of extraordinary care. Because I can make the world's best moisturizer on the planet. Number one, it can be the best on the planet. Let's say that's undisputed. There could be trial after trial, and everybody agrees the Blue Cocoon is the number one best moisturizer on the planet. But if you don't think that you are worthy of the best moisturizer on the planet, so what? And these, I was going to say these women, referring to these women from 20 years ago, but I see the same challenge every single day. It's why we have more people watching us than shopping from us. There's aspiration there, but like not really. It's like wanting, I don't know, a designer dress or purse or car or something that's feels like a future version of yourself. That's not a real version of yourself, but that you hold there in the distance to aspire to. And there's people who do that with us now, where they're aspiring to be the kind of person who spends loving time with themselves twice a day.
You are already worthy. And you, by the way, I love that insight. That's such an amazing. I don't think I've heard a better insight in aspirational beauty. That if it's too aspirational, too beautiful, people might not use it. And you overcome that not by making the packaging or the product or the experience less beautiful, but by making the consumer feel that they are worthy of that experience right now. This moment is yours. I'm pretty sure it came from there.
Yeah. Yeah. Letting everything rise together. My goal, to make the best of the best. My other goal, to let you know that you are the best of the best. Those things need to go together.
Love it. Make everything rise. That's why you show rising moons too. For some reason, I'm getting a feel how well you have thought of every element of your brand. Love it. Absolutely love it. I can listen to you for like 12 hours continuously. Coming back to speed round, that's what a creative process is. You keep jumping, right? Yeah. So what is your favorite movie line quote of all time? Just one line or one quote.
These two were funny. This and the book one was like, I haven't watched a movie for fun. I would say pass. I don't have anything stellar to come from that. I do read a lot and I do listen to a lot of things, but um,
Your favorite book?
I used to say Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, not for a lot of the reasons that it could be, but some really specific scenes in there. Um, and I'm speaking specifically to the book. I grew up reading the book, and I know there's been a few movies now made. I have not seen the newest. There's a new one, but There's a moment in the book. Are you familiar with Charlie and the Chocolate Factory? A little boy who grows up real poor, and um, he would get 10 cents or something for his birthday every year. And all of his grandparents and everyone would save to give him like that 10 cents. And he would buy a candy bar with it. So once a year, he would buy a candy bar. And it was a big deal because there was no extra money. It was like cabbage soup times. And when he would get his chocolate bar, he would eat this one chocolate bar over weeks. And at first, when he would first buy it, it was a big deal. It was like the birthday thing. You take it home, and he would just peel back the paper just a little bit to reveal the little gold foil on the inside of the chocolate bar. And the description of his appreciation for knowing that this chocolate bar was his and it was special and he got to take this time with it. And even though it was the most precious thing that he was being given, he enjoyed every second. And these little descriptive moments, there's something about the gold foil inside of a simple chocolate bar that makes it feel extra special. It inspires sound in my head, even thinking about that, the crinkle of the paper opening to foil. But he describes this process of picking away at this chocolate bar over days and weeks and until he's eaten the whole thing. And so every year he had this ritual of very slowly partaking in this chocolate bar. And then ultimately he ends up winning. There was the chocolate factory is there in his town. And so the irony of he's starving. He's in a family that's starving basically. And he's next to this chocolate factory. And he ends up winning a ticket through his one of his birthday chocolate bars has a gold ticket in it. And he gets to go with a handful of other kids that also won to the chocolate factory. And so a whole adventure ensues, and the kids are all kind of obnoxious. It's a whole thing. But they go to this fantastical world. In Charlie and the Chocolate Factory itself, the actual chocolate factory is pretty fantastical. And there's chocolate rivers, and there's wallpaper you can lick and smell, and it's a fantastical world. And so there's that part of the story that's appealing to me because it's fantasy around chocolate. And also, I have chocolate in 6 of our 8 formulas. So it is one of our key ingredients. I always said we should have a chocolate factory since we already do. But it's less about the fantastical moments of that movie than it is about that really tender one of him in the chocolate bar. It's very personal, that moment and that relationship to that. Yeah, there's pieces in that were a big deal to me. And it might have been a little how I approach things too. Oh, okay. I want to go back to road trip. So the chocolate bar comes back for me when I first moved out to California. I was living in my car and sleeping in the streets and didn't have anywhere to go and had run out of money, had assumed I'd be able to get a job. I'd been working in restaurants since I was 12. I never anticipated challenge being hired. There's other podcasts where I go into the whole more of the whole story on that. It would take days. But the result was I ended up getting a majority of my food from a women's shelter where twice a week I could go and I could pick up a bag of groceries. And so I would pick up a paper sack and it would be almost all canned vegetables, the things that people contribute to donation centers. Dinner was a can of potatoes or a can of corn. And I was so grateful for everything that was in that bag. It kept us well. But in the bottom of the bag was a Butterfinger every week. And my dinner might be half a can of potatoes and half a can of corn with some hot sauce that I sniped from Taco Bell. It was while using their restrooms. Um, there wasn't much going on in the food space, and it was a pretty scary time. But at the bottom of that bag would be a ridiculous Butterfinger. And Butterfingers get stuck in your teeth, but they are super delicious. And I would eat that Butterfinger all week long until I'd get the next bag. And there was something about it that felt so special, even when everything else felt so hard. And I see something similar today in my work. You know, I talk about being in my DMs, and like I know I could get in here now and I could open my Instagram, and there'll be some message like this in there where the world is really hard right now. There's a lot happening that feels really heavy and really hard. And there's a lot of people struggling. And these are just everyday humans. And they'll write to me and they'll tell me about the loss of their brother or the loss of a baby or the warring that's happening that they're having challenge with or their own health problems that they're facing. And they'll share with me that they went to the sink and took just a few minutes and splashed water on their face and felt like a human again. They'll share that they took a shower and did what I told them and did the problem solver on their entire back, and now their whole body is tingling. And they had never felt that sensation before. I get stories every day from people who are just finding the soft, warm spots in this often cold, hard world. And they might come looking for a moisturizer, but they come out with a whole different gift.
Love it. Tell me, in just one line, would you take funding if it is given to you today?
If I only had one word, no.
One line. If let's say I offer you, let's say I
If it
offer
was
you.
a simple yes or no, I'd have to say no. If it was there would be a whole lot of it depends. For 14 years, we haven't taken money. I would say in general, we're not looking for it. The conditions upon which usually money is lent, I'm probably not going to be on board with. I say all the time, I'd be the first person to get fired if someone came in. Um, yeah, the decisions that we
Me
make,
too. That's why I don't take money because I know
then
they won't keep me
yes,
long.
nope,
The number one fear I have. Yeah.
must be the boss. I think at this point, we're far enough along in our company and we have everything finally set up. All of our operations are set up. Our capacity is here. Our team is here. We have exceptional people on our team. And we're so strong in these foundational pieces, the North Star pieces, that I think that we could have funding now and be just fine. And it would probably be great for the business, frankly. It would be really great to have some runway to play with and to explore some of these areas that do actually take a lot of money to participate in and that we haven't been able to participate in as a client-funded brand. So I think that there is a world in which we would take funding and it would matter a lot who it came from, why it was coming, what it was going to, what the expectation was in return. If I could do things exactly as I do them now, and if someone just said, here, May, here's $10 million, let's put this behind the feel good advertising where we're going to inundate people with love messages, I would take that. If there was no conditions and I could do what I could do, I think I
Yeah.
would consider it.
Love it. I will give you two options. I think I know what you will pick. The one option is VC that want to scale your brand into $100 million or whatever, sell it for $500 million. Second option is someone who loves May Lindstrom and wants to scale the May Lindstrom experience. Like he or she wants millions of more people to be touched by May Lindstrom. I think you will go with this guy, right?
100%. Yeah, the first one's not interesting. I don't have an interest in scaling to sell. The only reason that I would scale is so we could stay.
Love it. I'm going to write it down. Scale to sell and scale to stay. I love it.
It does feel like um, our business is 12 years since we've launched, 15 years since I started actively working on it. It still feels like the teenager that it is. It feels like that kind of preteen teen where it's not an adult yet. It can't walk on its own without me, but it's got some strong independence. And I think that we're probably decades away from me not wanting to be involved, if that even happens in my lifetime, if I'm so lucky to be able to keep doing this. I'm not looking for an exit. I'm looking for a way. I don't know how many times I can repeat this, but better every day, better every batch. The commitment doesn't change. It's just I double down and double down. And what it means to get better, that might change. What am I focusing on? Am I focusing on our ingredients? Am I focusing on our packaging? Am I focusing on our care? Am I focusing on touching more people? Am I focusing on an in-person experience? Am I focusing on education? Am I focusing on meeting people in person? Am I focusing on what? There's a lot of areas in which to grow. There's a lot of people we have the ability to touch. I very much welcome all the resources to make that happen in a way that's sustainable and carries on what we've so carefully built. My preference is that does what it's always done, which is come directly through our clients. And I think that we have the ability to do that.
I agree. I'll give you three now phrases, and you have to choose one word or one line association. Full moon night. What do you think of what comes to your mind?
I think of how many times you've brought up moons in this call.
Well, yeah, a few times, yeah. I see that on your posts, right? Social media posts.
A full moon night. I have a balcony off of my bedroom, and every morning and every night, that's where I start and end my day. And I go out there, and in the morning, it's to roll around and do some stretches, and I'll just spend 5 or 10 minutes out there with my body. And at night, after we put the kids to bed, my husband and I sit out there and look at the moon. And we're really lucky. The piece of land that we're on is a crossing zone for many different animals. We have coyotes who walk right through our property. We have owls every night when we're sitting out there and we're listening to the moon. There's owls constantly, almost too loud. Sometimes they wake me up in the middle of the night. And there's hawks and all kinds of wildlife. I live in Los Angeles. I grew up an hour outside a town of 800 people in northern Minnesota. I live a world away from where I ever thought that I'd be, but I still wake up to the sunrise and I go to bed with the moon and I hear owls in the night and I'm still me.
I'll have to decode this when I listen to this.
Good luck making that a one word.
Love, because you talk about bottling love. What does love mean to you? What is love? What is love? Yeah.
It's the sparkle. It's the sparkle. If you can feel it when you say love, if you can feel it in your body, it feels like a sparkle. It feels like warmth. It feels like a flood. There's a sensation to it. I think love has a presence and it moves through our bodies. It moves through our conversation. It moves through the energy in a room. Love is a returning for me all the time. You can't put love in a bottle, actually. It's not a thing that you can contain, but what you can do is make a catalyst to open that part of yourself. That's what I was looking for when I would be in women's bathrooms and they would open a jar and they would smell something and their eyes would light up. It's adjacent. It's adjacent to love. There's this flickering. They could be smelling a rose. It's not about the rose. It's about what happens in them when they stop and pause and let themselves be filled with rose. That's love.
Love it. Wow, that's what you said was about love, and I loved it. So sometimes you go very deep. That's what makes you male and strong. May. This was a super digest episode. We have been going on for what, 3.5 hours? Exactly. I've never done this long a podcast episode in my life, but I promise you I can go on for another 6 hours with you. I would still love to learn and listen to you more. What you have done for the category for beauty, not just for the consumers, but hundreds and hundreds of beauty founders that have inspired to take this route and walk in your footsteps, I think is really remarkable. And it's not about the end revenue that you achieve, the profits you make, how big you become. It's about changing of the mindset. It's about how people perceive themselves, how they think they are worthy of love, or living every moment to their best, authentic, true selves. I think is just remarkable. I truly wish there were more beauty brands that speak all these words, really actually deliver what you deliver. I've never used your product, but I honestly feel that I am a brand advocate, and I experience, like you said, the people who read your posts or emails, and I could totally identify because every time I see your content and I go to your site or whether it's on social media, I feel that. I feel the authenticity. I feel there's somebody who took the risk on her shoulders to step change, to game change a category which nobody else leave the mainstream. I don't think any indie beauty founder I have seen has been able to do what you have been able to do. My why not was because I think women understand beauty intuitively. You speak about what if, I call it my why not. The feminine side, if there's any brand that has brought the feminine, you call it expression or the side to the fore, and understood that aspect of beauty and that relationship that beauty has with women, I think it's May Lindstrom. I don't know any other brand. They might have cool packaging, they might have packaging that women love, they like, etc. But nobody does it so holistically as you have done. An honor and pleasure to have you on this podcast, and I can go on and on with you. What is one message you want to leave all the listeners and viewers of this podcast, whether it is your any collection, anything you're launching, or any other message that the one and only May Lindstrom wants to?
Just a great big invitation. Just just come back here. Just come back here to your skin. And if that doesn't mean anything to you yet, then it's a perfect place to start. And if you just meet yourself in the water, find yourself under the sink, under the shower, dip into a bath, you're not going to know what to do to begin. It's actually really fun for me. I spend a lot of time talking to women in their 60s and 70s who've never done this kind of care, and they're learning all over again just how to wash their face. It's like learning to boil an egg if you've never cooked. And it can be so simple. There doesn't have to be any rules. There's no right or wrong. This isn't something you're going to read on the side of a box. There's no instructions here. It is just an invitation. Your skin holds you. Your skin holds you. What if it could hold you and have it feel good?
May, absolutely a pleasure and honor to have you on this episode, and you take out so much of your invaluable time and help out other beauty founders, and not just give them systems and processes, but also give them a peek into how May Lindstrom thinks, feels, does things, what the brand stands for. Your brand needs no introduction, but for anybody listening or watching, take May's invitation.
Let yourself be held. Let yourself be held in your own skin. It is what it does. It is our largest and most vulnerable outward facing organ. It's powerful, and it is there to hold you.
Love it. I'll end this episode on the note that love is the answer. So, to every problem, and May Lindstrom is somebody who can make you experience it unlike any other skincare brand that you have seen. And it's not just skincare. I mentioned that at the start, and I truly believe in it. It's a movement that is telling you that beauty lies within, and that is never going to fade, whether you're 50, 60, 70, 40, whatever. On that note, I think that this is a good note to end the podcast on. Well, thank you so much, May. It was, like I said, absolute honor and pleasure to have you on this episode. What great conversation we had.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to this What Beauty Founders Don't Know podcast for amazing guests and insights on growing your beauty brand. Visit jumpaccelerator.com and take the quiz to find out how ready you are to make the jump to $20 to $50 million plus. And above all, don't miss out on your free online course taken by hundreds of successful beauty founders. Sign up for your free online course now. Till the next episode.